2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's nice when we all say it together instead of online.
Our best one in months.
No, you're good.
The Town of Burlington will be holding the March 17th, 2022 meeting of Planning Board as a virtual electronic meeting due to the current state of emergency due to the COVID-19 virus. As such, governing issued an executive order March 12, 2020, authorizing remote meetings, GLC 30A, Section 20.
Those seeking to participate remotely can do so via the following. If you go to the website townofburlington.webex.com, the meeting code to join us is 2346-987-0580, and our meeting password is 1645. By phone, you can join us at 617-315-0704. The meeting is being broadcast on the BCAT government channel, which can be found on Comcast Channel 99, RCN 15, and streamed on the Facebook Live via the BCAT government Facebook page. The public will be able to make comments during the time for public comment. Questions can be asked via WebEx, WebEx chat, Facebook Live, and during the meeting. All persons seeking to speak must identify themselves ahead of time.
We have items being continued off this week's agenda. May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take items 7I through 7N together and out of order for discussion purposes.
Second?
Discussion, application for approval of a minor engineering change, 43 South Avenue. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item J is a public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.1, light manufacturing of processing plants of the South Avenue Plan Development, PD, zoning district, provisions, 43 South Avenue. Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item K is a public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.4 hazardous and toxic materials, chemical use, storage, transport, disposal, or discharge. Disposal might be off-site and off appropriate manifest, and discharge must be only be a sanitary sewer if allowed by Massachusetts Water Resources Authority and the Burlington Department of Public Works of the South Avenue Plan Development, PD, zoning district, provisions, 43 South Avenue. Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item I, public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.5, generation of a storage of hazardous waste limited to the volume classified as very small quantity generated with approval of Board of Health of the South Avenue Plan Development, PD, zoning district, 43 South Avenue. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item M, public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.6, generation of storage of hazardous waste limited to volumes classified as small quantity generated with approval of Board of Health of the South Avenue Plan Development, PD, zoning district, provisions, 43 South Avenue. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item N, public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 1.6.16, above ground storage of oils and fuels, petroleum products, including storage for on-site heating purposes and landscaping, maintenance equipment in excess of 50 gallons. Underground storage is prohibited of the South Avenue Land Development, PD, zoning district, provisions, 43 South Avenue. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue these matters to the planning board meeting of April 7th, 2022.
Second. Motion made second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
There you go.
Madam Chair, I'd further like to make a motion to take item 7O out of order for discussion purposes.
Second.
Planning board hereby accepts the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice petition
So we have to, right?
Oh, we have to
take the
vote on, oh,
Let's vote on the
Taking the
motion,
order.
take it out of order.
Yep.
And we're second?
Second.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Gonna get back in the swing of things.
We got another motion?
we're not used to this,
Right.
no roll call.
6-0.
Yep.
We're gonna have to do this in person all the time.
Yeah, I know.
We don't have to do roll call.
Yeah, that's what we're waiting for, I think, right?
It's been a while.
Hey, Robert, the next motion maybe on the bottom of page 2?
So, motion.
Yeah, we need the second motion made.
Oh, okay,
I thought you did it.
sorry, no, I didn't do this. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the planning board hereby accepts the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice the petition to rezone the property located at 54 Middlesex Turnpike, map 56, parcel 7-0, from general business BG district to the Innovation I district as requested by the Cohen Realty Group property owner on March 14th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, one more at the next,
One more motion, next page.
top of the next page.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take item 7P. Are we doing that one?
Six,
Or am I
seven.
missing?
No, oh,
Sorry,
7 PM.
So we need to.
out of order for
Out of
discussion
order, yeah.
purposes. 7P, right?
7-0.
7, we just did O.
Oh,
Okay.
we just did, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so the motion you just made, so, the rezoning, he withdrew it, but then I think we also need to continue, the remaining 56 and 15 Adams Street to the next meeting.
yeah,
did
so
not understand that.
we're
Thank
pulling
you.
them apart, so there's
Gotcha.
0.1 and 2.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Then, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to continue these matters as identified by Liz to the planning board meeting of April 7th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain.
Now I'd like to make a motion to take item 7P out of order for discussion purposes.
Second.
Item P is discussion, signed district map, zoning bylaw review committee.
Are we discussing or just continuing?
Continue.
Continuing.
Madam
Continuing.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of May 19th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on an item that's not on our current agenda? If so, please raise your hand and speak and identify yourself.
On to
Moving on.
I don't see anybody, I don't think anybody online, so I'll move on to announcements. The last day to register to vote for the annual town election is, March 18th. So tomorrow by 1 o'clock in the town clerk's office. The zoning, the Household Hazardous Waste Day, is happening on April 2nd at 8:30 to 12 PM at the Francis Wyman School. Land Use Committee is gonna meet on March 22nd, in the Town Hall Annex at 7 o'clock. Zoning Bylaw Review is meeting March 23rd at 6:30 via Zoom. And then the annual town election is Saturday, April 9th, from 8 AM to 8 PM at the Burlington High School. So get ready for that.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Do any other members have any other announcements?
Madam Chair?
Did we miss Waste Day?
Waste Day? No, April 2nd.
No, but
Oh, she mentioned.
I didn't hear,
Yeah.
right,
She
okay,
was,
thank
she
you.
mentioned it out of order.
I did it all out of order.
Well, I just wanted to let you know, I think, so I thought it.
Just a quick announcement, that there is going to be a vigil in support of Ukraine tomorrow, Friday 18th, at 5:30 to 6 PM at the Sculpture Park. This was not planned by the Sculpture Park Committee, so I don't really have any details, but I'm told, show up at 5:30, bring a candle if you want, and I'm not sure exactly what's gonna happen. So, a vigil in support of Ukraine. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I have a couple, so I apologize.
Sure.
First, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Donnie Flaherty, a longtime resident of Burlington, a volunteer with many different organizations, BCAT and many others, and 4th of July, and every time I was around town, I'd see Donnie, and just a great man, and it's a huge loss for the town. We called him Mr. Burlington, so I wanted to acknowledge his passing. Second, I'd like to congratulate, I meant to do this last meeting, and I forgot, Coach Concession on 472 wins as head coach of the Burlington High hockey team. He was here 35 years, also won two state titles. And I graduated in 1991, so all I've known about BHS hockey is Mr. C. So that was a big loss for Burlington. Another one. Lastly, I'd like to congratulate our own Chief Brown on his graduation today from the FBI National Academy, which is held down in Quantico, Virginia. Very prestigious program. It's a 10-week program that you have to be invited to. And Chief Brown was invited actually a couple of years ago, but couldn't go because of COVID. And I was so impressed when I was reading the website, I want to share it with everybody on what this actually is. The FBI National Academy is a professional course of study for U.S. and international law enforcement managers nominated by their agency heads because of demonstrated leadership qualities. The 10-week program, which provides coursework in intelligence theory, terrorism, and terrorist mindsets, management science, law, behavioral science, law enforcement communication, and forensic science, serves to improve the administration of justice and police departments and agencies at home and abroad, and to raise law enforcement standards, knowledge, and cooperation worldwide. So congratulations to Chief Brown for this excellent program, and I know he represented Burlington well, and I think that's really great that he got to go for 10 weeks, and I'm sure all the boys in the station will be happy to have him back next week. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. On to matters of appointment. May I have a motion, please?
Continue private hearing, petition to amend zoning bylaw, Article 2, definition, Article 5, dimensional requirements to address groundwater separation for one dwelling district submitted by the planning board.
Second. Thank you. Staff, do you have any comments, please?
I do. Liz is putting up a very short PowerPoint that we put together. I also want to say John Keeley, Conservation Administrator, is on the WebEx as well to hopefully help me answer a couple questions. And is Eileen on as well?
Eileen was not able to make it tonight. She was
Okay, great.
Or she's half and half.
Eileen has been doing wonderful work on
Yeah, she's been
stormwater
amazing.
and all of this conversation. So what we wanted to do really quickly is define what this is, what this isn't, and kind of get through a couple questions that I know have come up. So Liz, you can go to the next slide. So what this is a dimensional criteria that we're proposing to add to Article 5 of the zoning bylaw, dimensional, which is the dimensional section. And what it is it is requiring, just like setbacks and height, a dimensional requirement that you be 2 feet above the estimated seasonal high groundwater table. And what we have here is a very simple diagram of just in space. This is where you'll need to be when you submit a building permit. They will review, does it meet the height, does it meet the setbacks, and there'll be information on where the estimated seasonal high groundwater table is. So say it's at 197, so the basement needs to be at 199 or above. And it's just really looking, is it or is it not? This only affects the RO district, which is one-family residential. It only kicks in if you have a total new construction or you have a footprint, an addition footprint of over 1,000 square feet or more. If you have an existing home and you add a 1,000 square foot footprint, it only applies to that new footprint. You don't need to comply, have everything else comply. The Conservation Commission has reached out to some engineers to figure out kind of what the average cost for this is. The average cost for a stormwater evaluation and plot plan is somewhere around $3,000 for all of the information. For this work alone can be between $500 and $1,000 to get this information. Then what else?
Next slide.
Sure. Yes. So just to highlight, as all of you know, because we spend a lot of times in commercial development and non-single family land, we review stormwater in all of our site plans, all of our subdivisions, and it sits in all of those rules and regs. You can't have more water come off your property in the post-condition than the pre-condition. And we go through a lot of effort to get the reports and the data to make sure that that's the case. What this bylaw, again, is doing, this is a dimensional requirement of the 2 feet. Can you go back one?
Yeah.
Sorry. So just, there is a provision that if you are less than the 2 feet, the issue is if you're putting a basement in the groundwater with the sump pumps and you're gonna pump it out. So if you pump it out and surface groundwater, make sure any of that discharge is mitigated on your property, not your neighbor's property, your property. And again, that if they are less than the 2 feet, we're requiring that there be a plan, a stormwater plan and discharge plan to mitigate that additional, any additional discharge from being less than the 2 feet. So you can be less than, but you have to make sure that it will work. Okay, next slide. Next slide, next slide. So also, just a reminder, the conservation under Article 14 enforces the stormwater bylaw. There's updates to that as well, as many of you are staying in tune with their meetings. And the Board of Health also has a, can you go back one? Sorry, I'm jumping around. The Board of Health regulations for stormwater and runoff management, which as we spoke with the Board of Health today, when they're doing demo inspections, they bring it up to make sure that homeowners do know, and obviously if there's complaints that come through the Board of Health, they go out and take a look at any issues for stormwater and discharge that is affecting their neighbors. Okay, now next slide. This is the same, so again, what I mentioned, can you go one more down? So the other thing, so the only other change that I wanted to bring up is, so we had soil scientist or licensed soil evaluator. We are staying with licensed soil evaluator to be very clear what the licensing is and who that person is. And we had a discussion with Conservation and Board of Health, Building, and Planning today, and just trying to figure out what we're already doing, where the oversight is needed, and what the information that we need to be including in this particular piece. So item 5163B is modified slightly to not have all of those other departments reviewing these engineering plans, but to have that engineering plan by a licensed engineer submitted. And then the last item D is new in terms of there has been some kind of just hook in from some pumps into the town drainage system, which is not what we want, because that'll just affect neighbors downstream. So making it clear that if you are producing more discharge, that you also need to mitigate that on your property, not just hook into roadway stormwater system. So that's it. So I'm sure there's probably questions, but just wanted to highlight where we were, and this is a dimensional requirement.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments that they'd like to contribute?
I just have one comment, because there's been a lot of public discussion about this online and a lot of concern and consternation. And I know Kristen said this, but I just want to make it really clear. The purpose of this bylaw is to protect your neighbors, to make sure that when someone builds a large addition, that it doesn't have a negative impact on their neighbor's property. And I just think that needs to be really clear, because I don't think that message was getting through online. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
I was saying, do we still get part of our water from our well field? Do we, in other words, when the MWRA came along, we did hook into that as an emergency measure initially, but then we began getting some water from them, and then there were changes. So forth. I used to keep track of it, but I don't anymore. But I have a feeling that we still, our well field still contributes.
Yes, I believe they do.
Yeah, and I think this is an appropriate time to mention, when we're talking about this, to let residents know that in fact, we do have to be careful of our properties and so forth and water supply because, you know, we drink from it every day. We don't get it all from MWRA. So, and this seems to be a minor thing, but it's good that we pay attention. Thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair, can I say one more thing? I forgot?
Please.
I just also wanted to say that Lexington, Wilmington, Billerica, and there's one more that I'm forgetting, all on our surrounding towns, all require, Bedford?
I think
All require a separation from groundwater in their single-family home building permits. We're not we're not reinventing the wheel here.
Anyone else? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment or speak at this time?
Is anyone on?
I don't see.
Hi, everyone.
Hello?
My name is Susan Cadillac. I'm at 186 Mill Street. I did send over some questions, so thank you, Kristen, for the response. One of them was about the number of departments, so I'm glad to see that that was reduced to one. So I just wanted to go through the $3,000 that you guys are estimating to get the information. So I just want to be clear that that is for a homeowner to bring an excavator on site, dig down 8 to 10 feet, determine the height of the water table. And there was one part of the proposal that wasn't talked about, and that was item E, that says that not only do you have to get your own engineer to design the system and create a plan, but there's also a provision that the applicant has agreed to pay the fee for consulting services to perform engineering review. So is that a second, that looks like that's not only do you have to hire your own engineer to design the system, but there's also a second engineering fee? And what is that fee, and how is that engineer selected, and how does that process play out?
So I'm going to actually ask John Keeley from Conservation to answer the first part of your question, since their department has been doing this, researching estimated costs. And the second question I will answer when he's done.
Actually, most of these projects, if not all of these projects, would also require a stormwater permit. And as part of that, they would be doing test pits and determining the water table to design a drainage system. So they wouldn't have to do test pits for both purposes. At one test pit, or one set of test pits would be suitable for both. So they could really be killing two birds with one stone, one for determining the water for the foundation and the other for drainage for rooftop runoff. Right, you are correct that price would include probably bringing in the excavator and having a licensed soil evaluator on site.
To the second question on 4453G.
In terms of engineering review. And maybe it actually should be clearer, but so 4453G, all of our boards have the ability to, if there's something that cannot be reviewed in-house for some reason, that to go out to have engineering peer review services. That's mutually negotiated usually with the applicant. It's not just, you just pay and you don't get it back. So I mean, if there's questions, and John, I'm not sure how you're looking at that for stormwater in terms of 4353G funds. This language was language that we had carried over from a draft that we were looking at in Lexington. So I don't know, John, if you have comments on how that works with you guys and how that might work here.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had the need to do that, and we certainly wouldn't have the need to do that for a single family house. That would be more for large commercial complex commercial projects.
Right, which is just a standard, the boards have the right to, under 4453G, if needed, to go through the peer review process. So noted question, we can discuss it further.
Yeah, because I think that if that is something that isn't typically needed in smaller projects, my question is, does it need to be in there? And I know that was copied from Lexington, and obviously their median income is, a lot higher than Burlington, so it may not be as much of a concern, but I think, if someone is already retaining an engineer and designing a system, what's the thought behind having in this bylaw, the provision to pay for a second engineer? And then what will the impact be on building heights, and how does this relate to the stormwater proposal? Because I know in a lot of those towns that you mentioned that have this bylaw, a lot of builders will sort of build up the grade so that the house can be higher so that you can meet building height. But the stormwater bylaw is proposing that if you increase grade by more than 6 inches, that you then go for a public hearing. So I'm just concerned that there's not enough provision to make this a streamlined process, and then it becomes a complicated process.
So I will answer in terms of just the dimension piece of it. So how you measure height is the average mean grade around the building. If you need to be higher up out of the water table, then that's going to affect that average mean grade. So therefore, I mean, if you do have to build up, I'll let John answer that question, but there is a provision that if you can't meet the 2 feet, you can do it. You just need to make sure that whatever you're doing is not causing an issue and with a professional engineer process. With that, I know, John, that we've talked about that before, and that does trigger, changing of grades and triggering the stormwater bylaw, if you want to address that piece of it.
Sure. So all of the thresholds are sort of under consideration now as the Conservation Commission's reviewing the draft bylaw. So the 6-inch elevation is on the table for discussion with the Conservation Commission. They haven't decided anything at this point, really.
I'm just thinking about areas like Sandy Brook and neighborhoods like that where the water table is extremely high, and if there's no option to raise the grade, because maybe the water table's too high to mitigate the stormwater on site, that could be a real issue as far as the development and, the value of the property. And then I had one of my other questions, which I saw that you amended the bylaw about properties like that for the tie-in, to the stormwater system, that tying into the stormwater is allowed under the EPA MS4 permit. Bedford, for example, allows that to happen as long as it's filtered, because the concern is contaminants getting into the stormwater system. So I guess that's really, a question, because there are a lot of sump pumps in Burlington. There are a lot of, our town, when it was developed, there are a lot of homes that are in the water table. So, I'm just thinking about those properties that, that are going to encounter this, and what does that process look like for them? I think groundwater and sump pumps should be, the water should be mitigated. You shouldn't be dumping it on your neighbor. We've had, issues with neighbors dumping their sump pumps on our land. No one likes to deal with that, but I'm also thinking about the process for a homeowner who's looking to put on an addition. How can this, are we being thoughtful about the process and it being streamlined without, creating roadblocks and a complicated process for a residential project?
I don't think the process is any different if a homeowner versus a developer is going to, continue like a development process. If they're going to be building and they're going to have a stormwater or drainage issue to their neighbor, like that's an issue, like altogether. It's not.
Yeah, no, I didn't say homeowner or developer. I'm just saying, anyone. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't mitigate the stormwater. I'm more asking you about the process of.
So I think there's 2 components. The stormwater issue is actually a conservation problem or conservation concept that really we should address with conservation.
Yeah, it's in your bylaw, though. It's under item A and B.
Agreed, but right now,
Yes.
what
it's
we're
in-
talking about, what tonight's, you know, agenda
Yep.
is talking about, a different concept, so.
So, Madam Chair,
Okay, I didn't bring up stormwater, but stormwater is mentioned in your bylaw.
this is basement slab crawl space. If you can't build a basement or a full basement, you can still build your square foot.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. But, that there's different options above that space that, for you to still be able to build, if that's, sorry. I didn't mean to-
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, I wanted to ask John Keely something from the answer to Mrs. Cadillac's first question. I just wanted to make sure I understood. It sounded like what you were saying is that under our normal stormwater rules, some of that excavation and testing the test pits would have to be done anyway. So what is the additional cost? Because we're estimating $3,000, but some of that would have had to be paid anyway. So what is the additional cost just for this groundwater?
So that amount would be the stormwater evaluation complete stormwater evaluation. John, do you have a better number on if just to get the number for the separation? I think we did look at it. I just don't have it.
Because I'm wondering if it all is part of the same thing and there's no additional cost.
Right, in most cases, the investigation to determine the estimated seasonal high water table would be required anyway under the stormwater bylaw, so there'd be no additional expense to calculate it for the zoning setback to the water table.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you, John.
Can I just clarify one other thing? The EPA does allow clean sump pump water to be discharged. But our stormwater bylaw sort of combines the EPA requirements and also the DEP, the state stormwater regulations, which regulate rates and volume of discharge. So the EPA is the EPA bylaw is a water quality bylaw. The DEP stormwater bylaw, stormwater regulations are concerned with both quantity and quality. So we have to regulate rates and volumes of water leaving a site. And that comes not from the EPA, but from the DEP.
Okay, so then, again, what you were saying then is, if somebody wanted to build, say, a new house, just because it's easier to think of it that way, and they couldn't build a full basement because the water table was too high, they could perhaps do a slab or a crawl space, correct?
Yes.
And if the slab or the crawl space was underwater, probably shouldn't be building there, right?
Yeah,
Right,
but
I mean, they could
in
still-
retrospect, if
could
they
still-
have like 1,000 square foot space, all they have to do is show that they're mitigating the water.
Yes, that's true, yeah, if they can.
And that's it.
If they can,
And ethically,
yes,
it makes sense.
yes.
We have developers who are very in tune with the community. There are others who are trying to just kind of join in the Burlington bandwagon and aren't necessarily invested in the community. It's not to say one person or another, but at the end of the day, we're saying 1,000 square feet or above. If you're building anything above that, you have to show how you're going to mitigate that water.
Right, for the protection of your neighbors.
That's an ethical concept. So if you're the developer in this community, you would want that, because these are your neighbors, these are your peers. This is a concern, and we've all received emails from many neighbors who have had, they're a new developer, not Cadillac. I'm not, saying you. I'm just saying in general, there have been neighbors where we've received emails that have said, our neighbors, like, our basement is flooded. How are we gonna protect the people of our community? This is, if somebody else can tell me how we can do it, otherwise, by all means, please tell me. Tell us how we can do it. but we're trying to protect our neighbors, our community as a whole.
Right.
For $2,500, when some of these developers are making or selling these properties for 1.5, 1.8, like, that's a drop in the bucket. This is why we're doing what we're doing.
Although it sounds like it's not even $2,500 because they would have had to spend that anyway for the stormwater.
If it was $4,000.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
I mean, do you want to make friends with your neighbors? Or do you, I mean, like, really?
And
Member Espejo?
Madam Chair, yeah, it's super frustrating for us when we have, people in town who come to us who get water in their basements after a new development goes in nearby, and they've never had it in like 40 years. And it's just super, super frustrating to hear that, and
Yeah, I
they
just
all
want to
know
be clear, I'm not implying that we shouldn't manage groundwater and that we shouldn't put systems in. I just want to be clear, because that's what I'm hearing in response.
Okay,
That's
no, I was
not-
just trying to.
That
if I
wasn't
could
my
con-
position.
If I could continue?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
that's, please.
If I could, it's just, that's why we're doing this, and that's like really one of the frustrations I've seen since I've been on the planning board, is just, I've seen town meeting members have this happen to residents, longtime residents, and it's just, there's gotta be something that's gonna be done, and that's why we're doing it. We're not looking to make anyone's life harder, we're just trying to make lives easier and better for our residents, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else on the board? Staff?
I am looking in the chat, Madam Chair. I don't see anybody raising their hand in the WebEx. Oh, actually, I do have Andrea Tracy, Madam Chair, if you wanna, I do see her hand raised.
Ms. Tracy, please. Ms. Tracy?
As she's finding the
Hi.
oh, there she is.
I'm back. Happy St. Patrick's Day, folks.
Happy St.
Ditto.
Patrick's Day.
Is this just for residential dwellings, or is this also for commercial
No,
plazas that are?
This particular bylaw is just for residential. The commercial and site plan are already, there's already a requirement for full stormwater reports for commercial development. So we look at the big picture of water. I just also wanted to mention that Eileen Coleman from Conservation has joined us as well, and she's been really spearheading a lot of this effort and done a wonderful job.
Ms. Coleman, would you like to speak?
John, my question was, did you get the video?
I was just going to say, no, I think John has been answering all the questions. If you have any questions for me, though, I'm here now for the end of the meeting if you wish.
So John, Andrea again, did you get the video I sent of the roof drain runoff at Mass Glass last week?
If that was addressed to me, the answer is no, I did not receive it.
And it went to planning and it went to conservation. There was a video of a river coming off of the Mass Glass roof drain.
That's a different matter.
They need to take it
It
out.
may-
I don't know that this is a matter that is relative to the subject that we're
Let me
speaking.
point out the relativity to this, Brenda.
Oh, please do.
The water flooded our neighborhood. It ran off the roof of Mass Glass. It did not enter a storm drain. It came across the street. It went down Murray Ave and it flooded out 3 people.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I apologize for, the issue at hand, but we're not talking about stormwater here.
So I think, the whole picture of stormwater between conservation and this bylaw is, I don't think that particular piece is, unless they have their sump pump discharge going from the roof out, but I think it's a good point in terms of the full stormwater picture, but not directly related to the 2-foot separation. So, and also video, a lot of times video are too large for us to receive with the requirements for the town system, so anyway, because we didn't receive it either, if it was sent to us. So if you could, anyway, we haven't seen it, but I'm not surprised, it's a very old
It does sound like an important issue, but it probably should be handled offline.
Agreed.
And I just quickly just wanted to have John and Eileen mention when their next meeting is and their continued discussion on their stormwater bylaw update, if you guys could announce that before we conclude.
Sure, it's a week from tonight, Thursday, the 24th.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in the audience or online?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Why are we not voting on this tonight? It seems like it's been at a couple of meetings, we had a subcommittee meeting, there weren't that many questions. Are we ready?
We just modified the draft, so
Okay.
just with that, I wanted to hear tonight a little bit.
Okay.
Actually, Liz did have a vote to go, in here.
Thank you, Liz.
Well, I took it out and I didn't want to get in, I don't know, anyway, I don't know if there's going to be changes with zoning bylaw review or land use, and
Oh, okay. All right.
I just,
In all fairness,
okay.
it's
Fair enough.
separation, like
Just
what
wanted
we're
to ask,
doing
but-
and what zoning bylaw is different.
Yeah.
But
it should be,
next meeting,
no, but if they had edits to this, I want to make sure, like, from town council, is this the version that the planning board voted?
sure.
I understand. Okay.
So that's that, and I just also want to thank John and Eileen for joining us and really helping me through this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of April 2nd, 2022.
Second.
Oh, no, that,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take items 7B and 7C together for discussion purposes.
Oh, second, sorry. We were discussing seven.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt everyone.
How funny is it to be in person?
I know.
all those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item B is a public hearing, continued public hearing, petition to amend the zoning bylaw, Article 3, districts, Article 4, use regulations, and Article 8, overlay districts, 8.5.0, town center, to create a new zoning district, town center multifamily, TCM, submitted by Novaya Real Estate Ventures LLC. C is a continued public hearing, petition to rezone property to town center multifamily, TCM, District 135, 137, 137R, 139A, 139 Cambridge Street, submitted by Novaya Real Estate Ventures LLC. Who is here on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Peter Carboni with Novi Real Estate Ventures here with Mark Vaughn
Welcome.
from Rebar and Jeff Feldman, my partner in the deal. So, thank you for having us. It's great to be live versus on screen. I think what we want to go through is a relatively quick presentation, but first off, we've probably been, I think we've been before you at least once, if not twice, and land use, the zoning, et cetera, trying to listen to all.
A handful of times.
Listen to all the comments and trying to be responsive to everything. And I think we're gonna have a great, hopefully, dialogue tonight on where we are, because I think we've been taking everything in, and we're gonna make some proposed changes tonight to maybe shrink down the size and scale of the project a little bit, to address some of the concerns that the neighbors have had, some members of the various boards have had. So I think with that, we're just gonna go through not that many slides, and we'll run through it and then see what questions you all have. So this was just the cover sheet. You know who the project team, myself, Jeff, Mark, et cetera, the team from Cube 3, Bowler Engineering, et cetera. The site, again, I think everybody's pretty familiar. We've probably all been through this a few times. The largest one, actually go back to that one sec, Jeff. So, nope, next one. So closer in shot, the lower part, Rogers Piano, the upper side, actually is a couple of houses that are not being used today by the Rogers folks, and then the Sorensen property. So it's everything basically outlined. It's a little over 3 acres of land that you guys have all seen this before. After that, just to highlight the two town center zones, the overlays, town center overlay, the central business and the civic district. We're in the lower one, sort of the peach color. Again, you guys have seen all this. So with that, again, the project. So what we're gonna propose tonight, which is gonna be highlighted on the next couple slides, really doesn't impact the front too much. So the front, we think, is a very beautiful design. If you've all been by this site millions of times, you know what it looks like today. We think the design is a really great design. There's some wetlands in the front that we're gonna preserve. We're gonna put in some larger trees, you know, in through the front. That's gonna greatly improve the streetscape up and down Cambridge Road. So the front really doesn't change too much, but we don't think the greatest impact was with the front. We think it's with some of the rear and so forth. So why don't you go ahead, Jeff? I think one of the things I wanted to highlight just on the next slide, again, just as a reminder on the master plan. So these are taken right from the master plan. Expand the range of housing options for young and for seniors, you know, in town. Certainly this project would, you know, be doing
I'm
that.
just gonna stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
For those who can't see.
Can't see that
anything.
far?
Yeah.
You want my version, Ms. Rappaport? Would you like?
Please.
Would you like one? Yeah,
Okay, Wes.
yeah.
Can you
And
see
we
this?
I have, my allergies kick in. When my allergies kick in, I can't see.
can't see anything?
Right, so
Okay.
maybe
Will-
for all of us old folk,
Here,
we might
Give
want
them
to
mine
see
too.
that.
hand out a couple, maybe you can share them.
Sharing's
Yeah.
caring, right?
These are, I think we emailed these to Kristen late this afternoon. You should have them on your email, in your inbox. Oh, did you not? Did you not
As of
send them?
6:45, I
Do you
didn't.
have more than
Okay.
one copy
I don't know,
of
Melissa
this?
may have sent them over.
I just gave you my copy as well.
Yeah, but we should,
I'll make the copies, but you can continue and I'll make.
Okay.
Yep.
You don't need to read, you don't need to see this. This is basically your master plan. It's the large stuff in bold. It's to expand housing options. It's to encourage development in areas with strong walkability near the town common, and to really enhance the Cambridge Street corridor. You know, this is straight from your master plan. This is what town folks have said. This is what we're hoping to have happen. So with the next slide, so here's the major slide of the whole presentation. If you want to, this is the one to really focus on. What we're proposing to do is to shrink the project down from 98 down to 82. So it's about 18% reduction over where we are. Again, we'd still meet the 15% affordability, which is about 13 units, out of these. It actually results in us doing a little more than 15%, candidly, just because of the way the math works, but obviously that's still our commitment. It reduces the overall net square footage on the project by about 25,000 square feet. So it goes from 140,000 square feet to 115. Now that does not count the area under the podium garage, which has the green space on top. But usually you don't count garage space in your square footage for a building. So that's the reduction that we're proposing today in terms of the building size, is by about 25,000 square feet. We're proposing to take one entire level off the back. So the back was going to be podium and then 3 levels. We're gonna cut an entire floor off. So it's a podium and 2 living levels above. Not much higher than a house, or many of the properties around are actually gonna be lower or higher than where we will end up in the back.
So Peter, you're saying,
Yeah.
by back, you mean the back, let's say it's U-shaped?
Yep.
The very back of the U, not
Yep.
either one of the sides of the U, but the very
Correct.
back
Well,
of it.
we have a ground floor plane that I'll point that out.
Okay.
When we get there. So, but think about it, so the front doesn't really change. The front is really 3 levels. So you can see the 2 that come out, and then it steps back. So it's only about 22 feet in the front, and then it steps up and there's another level. So you're up at about 33 feet, and then your gable puts you up a little bit, higher. We'll put you up to 35 feet in that range. We're under the zoning requirements and so forth. So the front really doesn't change too much from a massing standpoint. The reduced height in the back comes down almost 13 feet. Your floor-to-floors are 11, 12, 13 feet. So your back height comes down from 45 to about 32, 33 feet as part of the rear section. Again, I'll point that out when we get to the next slide.
Hey, thanks, Liz.
For purposes of traffic has been a big concern. It's been pointed out from day one. There's a slide again that we're going to get to at the end, but one of the large drivers of traffic on this project has been the potential for retail on the site. So we've been showing we're about 4,000 square feet of retail on the site. We don't think we're going to propose 0 retail. We're not going to mix them. We think that about 25% of the traffic that was generated on the traffic and the memo that we did, haven't done a full-blown traffic study, but we've taken traffic counts, and then we've done some IT trip generation studies. We'll show that we were at about a little over 900 vehicle trips per day, but over 200 of those were just from the 4,000 square feet of retail. So a room of about this size was generating 220 vehicle trips per day. So I'm gonna show when we take that off, the impact on that from a traffic standpoint is very significant. We're gonna increase the buffer in the back. So there's a required buffer of 50 feet when you abut an RO district. Initially, we were gonna ask for a waiver to have drive aisles and things in there. Now, we're not. We're gonna pull everything out so that you have that 50-foot buffer in the back. This will come with a lot more landscaping in the back, a lot more trees in the back. We still are evolving the landscaping and so forth on the back, but I'd like to come up with some other, maybe an amenity for the residents in the back. That's still TBD, but a lot more open space in the back of the property. Again, this just summarizes the traffic. We'll get to a little bit later. Based on the way the property is currently, I would say, used, zoned, built, it's warehouse and industrial. If it were being used, and we know right now that there's not much activity going on in that site, but if it were rented for what it's built for, you get almost 400 vehicle trips per day. You're not seeing that today, but that would be your ITE numbers. If we were gonna, for what we proposed initially, we would have 922 vehicle trips per day. For what we're showing you today, we'd have 602 vehicle trips per day. And what we're gonna show you is that we're actually proposing a reduction in the peak hour traffic in the peak hour and nighttime is gonna reduce by about 31 vehicles. So the nighttime traffic, peak hour, would actually reduce over what you have there today if the buildings were occupied. And lastly, we don't think we're gonna need any waivers. I don't wanna make a blanket absolute, we don't need any waivers, but we're trying to have this so that we won't need any waivers at all. And we'll get to that, as we go. So those are 7 or 8 major changes. Mostly everything, the unit count brings everything down, square footage, heights, everything comes down, everything from impacts. I mean, this building will largely fit in with everything in the neighborhood, if not almost a little bit smaller in its height and I won't say breadth wide, width-wise and so forth. That is what we're showing. Jeff, why don't we go to the next? We'll keep going. Here's your before and after. So the left is what we came in with you've been seeing this for the last month or so. The left was, you can see the 50-foot buffer. You can see that there are a lot of trees in between this site and the homeowners behind us that are partly on town property, partly on our neighbor's property. But we were kind of gonna go right up to close to the lot line. Now we're pulling it all back. So the slide on the right is what we would be proposing now. So the building is about it's 88 feet from the property line, that far set back. So we've moved it probably about another 30 feet over where we were before. We've kept the drive aisles and the parking out of that area. We'll likely come in with a better landscaped plan.
So I just want to make sure I get the orientation correctly.
Yep.
So the left side of that picture, that's the back of the
Correct.
property, correct?
So we're looking at the
Okay,
back.
thank you.
Yeah. And then in the next slide, we'll point that out even clearer. Down the bottom, it shows this BCG, that's building to ground coverage. So the building to ground coverage goes down by about 7% with this new building. So there's more open space, with the new plan. Jeff, why don't you go to the next one? Here's your ground plane, your entire ground plane, so you can see what we're talking about. That 50-foot line is now dashed in red, so you can see where we're talking about. We're still having some conversations around whether or not the drive aisle at the top it will only be right in. It will never be an exit. So you can't come out that way and go left or right. It'll only be a right turn in. Whether or not it should only be emergency access, I think is open for debate. And so if we did it as emergency, we'd likely figure out a way to gate that off or close that off. The fire department police are gonna mandate that you get around this building. So there's no question that we're gonna have to have something that goes all the way around. Whether or not people will come in this way with cars if they're coming down from the north, or whether we just use the one, I think we can figure that out together. That's probably more of a planning issue, frankly, but it will impact, traffic in that in that area. So, but this is the circulation, for the site. You've pretty much seen this. The front of the building really hasn't changed much, other than the fact that there's no retail on this plan. One of the things that we've been talking about is maybe we put our amenity out near the edge. So where that number 3 is, maybe the amenity ends up out there as opposed to closer in, so that if someday we want to convert it over to a professional office space or something, we could do that. But for now, we just think that mixing the uses is driving the bus on traffic to a place where it's causing some issues and amongst all the discussions. So so for now, taking the retail out and just filling that back in with residential units and amenity space on that bottom wing is where we are. Go ahead, Jeff, you can go to the next one. So this gets a little bit more granular around the two projects, and apologize if it's a little hard to see. It should be in your packet, but basically the yellow is where we were up until tonight. The green is what we're proposing as of tonight. So it shows number of units from the 98 to the 92. It shows that the buffer, the building, the ground, and the height, we needed waivers under each of those 3 under the prior proposal. With the way we're doing this, we don't need waivers for any of those. The building to ground would still require a special permit, because I think that's 33% by right. And you can get a special permit up to, I think it's 40% with a special permit. So that's in there. The height in the back is only gonna be about 21 feet inside that 100 feet. And then when you drop out the 100, you go up a little bit, but we've shrunk it down considerably in the back. It's because there's a step in the building. You'll have your podium, your one level, and then it steps back, the building does. So the maximum number of stories, it was gonna be 4, it's now gonna be 3. Retail, taking it out, landscape buffer, we've increased. And the parking is gonna be somewhere around 120 to 130 spaces. The minimum / maximum would, if you just do the math, is 123. We're still debating whether we need a few more spaces for a visitor, those type of things, and that's something that we're still working on. If anything, if we needed a waiver for anything, it may end up being where those spaces go, and what that might mean is we have to maybe use impervious pavement someplace to put those spaces in. So still a discussion point to be had down the road. The next one, I believe, is our parking, so traffic. So this, apologize, this is going to be a little small. You might want to look at it on the pages. But what this says is the following. The column on the far left is the warehouse, retail, residential uses that are there today under the ITE numbers. 426 vehicle trips per day today. That's what the current property would be. The middle one is what we would have been if we built 98 units and retail. You would have been at 922, of which about 218 of those are generated. Go ahead, Joe.
Good question, because
No,
Barbara.
not at build-up,
Not
the
at
way it is
build-up.
now.
The way the buildings exist currently, not what potentially by right could be fully built out right now.
There's the existing buildings on the ground.
Existing buildings
they
now.
were occupied.
Correct, that's right.
Not the density that could be
That's
there
right.
currently, yeah.
That's right. And then the last column is just really comparing, if we go to the 82, you go to 602 vehicle trips per day. And you're only slightly more in terms of the number of vehicle trips in the morning, it's 6. And at night, you're actually 31 vehicle trips less than what you would be today, again, if the existing uses were occupied. So we've tried to come up with the math based on the 82 of what makes economic sense for us, but also what we think makes sense for the size of the project and what limits the traffic as much as possible with still making it a viable project for everyone, all concerned. So that's where we're ending up. I think we're trying to come up with something, again, that works for everybody. And if we decide, if you all decide in the town that the residential just isn't what you want, I understand it. This is about as good as we can do. I think it'll be a terrific building, the least impactful building, on this property, I think is what we've designed. We hope you can appreciate that, and we'll continue to work with the town, but we've listened to where, what all the comments have been, to what our neighbors have said. And I think we've come up with a good revised plan. So, with that, I don't know if Mark or Jeff, you guys want to add anything else to that, but that's really the discussion for tonight.
I mean, just to add some clarity, I think the comment, Joe, Barbara, that you made through the chair is So the traffic
Please.
is just looking at existing, and, you know, look, I mean, there's all sorts of uses that could go in by right that would be greater in size, but I know when you say that, it sounds like you're coming across as trying to threaten something, but that's not the intent. It's just to get the point across that there could be other uses that go in there that generate considerably more.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to realize that they can, you know, we need to realize what we, by right, literally could be looking at.
Right.
And to compare apples to apples, we need to be able to understand that, and that
Right.
is not what's existing now. What's by right is a much more densely, you know, populated area in that, you know.
We were gonna submit, so we have a traffic, what I call memo, that if you don't already have it, you'll have it tonight.
We did submit it.
You did submit it, so you have the analysis. It's about an 8-page memorandum that you haven't read it yet, but you will have it.
I think we do have it. I'll have to double
Yeah,
check.
admittedly, we just sent it over electronically, probably around 5:30 tonight.
So it in viewpoint.
I'm sorry?
Can you put it in viewpoint? Put it in viewpoint.
Can I? Yeah.
Yes, that'd be
certainly.
great.
Yeah, we will,
So
yeah.
if you can you copy that? and-
We'll make sure, yes, we'll make sure everybody
I think
gets
you
it.
attached too much to this email, because I don't have any
So I
emails.
think that the thing that people don't understand is that, you know, there is a by right ability to build. And then there is an ability to have something else be built on a certain parcel of land. And I think, you know, people get really frustrated by, you know, towards the planning board that, you know, we're trying to build what is in the best interest of the community, not only for a business aspect, but for a residential aspect and for everyone as a whole. So I want to put that out there because this is, this project is something that I think all of us has, you know, everyone in the planning board has received, you know, a considerable amount of, you know, feedback,
Sure.
positive and negative. So a couple things that I kind of want to talk about. We talk about commercial versus residential. What do you anticipate? Do you anticipate any commercial aspect in this project?
Only if you all decided you'd like to see some. And then, because I think we feel that it's driving excess traffic to the site, that with the mix of uses, it might be more than what the neighborhood wants to see there. But if you all said, we'd really like to see a mix because it's in keeping with the master plan that was designed 15 years ago, totally respect that. And maybe we could work in a professional office or something along those lines, which I think would be a good fit, but it may drive, the town would have to say, would be willing to live with a little bit more traffic. It's not gonna generate retail numbers like a grocery or a supermarket would, but naturally, a real estate office, an insurance,
Sure.
things like that will generate some. So we're certainly open to it.
Sure. What about renewable energy resources? You know, like are you open to having solar panels and, you know, actually, you know,
Yeah.
having, you know, electric resources back
Yeah.
to the community?
Yeah, so, as a developer of lots of real estate, we look at it every day, and that's the way the world is going. I actually was appointed to the Northeast Economic Climate Change Chamber just this past week that Mayor Somerville, Joe Curtatone, is now chairing, taking over that position. So it's huge on my radar screen, as well as a lot of other people. So the short answer is, Cube 3 designed a lot of these buildings, and they're foremost at how to design, you know, under the new codes and everything. The units will largely be, mostly if not all, electric themselves. The units themselves are pretty well known that they're heat pump type units, so the units are pretty much all run on electricity. Most of the newer buildings are starting to get converted over for even your hallways and common areas and things that used to be gas-fired rooftop units are getting converted over to electric. I imagine that that's as the way we will go. And I imagine that towns and cities will be mandating that within the next 3 to 5 years. Solar panels would be a little tough only because of the size of the project. There's not a lot of roof anymore. When we cut the 4th floor out, if it makes sense to do it, we'll absolutely think about it. It's just maybe not enough solar to generate enough electricity.
I think it always makes sense, so.
Happy to look at
Food
it.
for thought.
Yeah.
And then going for food for thought.
Yeah.
You talked about landscaping.
Yeah.
Have you thought about fruit-bearing or, fruit-bearing plants? Or those in the community or in the establishment of, the complex?
Not to that, we haven't gotten to that level, but we would welcome any input that you would like to see. We have a great landscape architect on this, that we'd love to work with you all to figure out what's the best. We have a beautiful area in front that, as everybody knows, there are wetlands out in the front that need to be preserved, and we think we can beautify what's out there. Then you'll have a lot more landscape opportunities, mostly along the back and down some of the side. But I think as we go through the process, whether it's through town meeting or thereafter, back at this board afterwards, because we still will need a special permit for things like the garage.
Sure.
And we'll need site plan approval, blah, 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 so.
I've personally received emails about, neighbors are really concerned about wildlife. They really appreciate the fact that, they can see, I don't really want to see coyotes, but they like to see coyotes.
Yeah.
Or, whatever wildlife is in that area.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've received as far as correspondence for neighboring, neighbors, they've noted that, any light or any type of activity would disrupt their ability to see the deer or coyote or whatever. What are you proposing for lighting in the rear of the property?
Nothing as of yet. We'd probably be doing the minimal on the back, whether it's emergency type, lower bollard type lights, because as you can see from the new plan, there's not a lot of activity. If we end up doing like an amenity out there, like maybe we do a small dog park or something within that 50-foot, still to be determined, we'd probably put a light or something there that you could put on a timer and shut off, those type of things. Open to all of that. With the new plan, there's a significant more buffer for if there's, I have coyotes in my house over in Woburn as well, because we live on a stream, and they run the stream. I'm gonna guess they're doing the same thing here. And to the back side of this property, as well as down by the Christian school, it's all wetlands. So I'm sure they're running that route.
I go back and forth as a woman, I look and, when I go into a parking lot, I expect that there's gonna be some well-lit area, so
Yep.
I, can ensure my safety. But in the same vein, if there's wildlife in the same, in that area, I wanna make sure that, or at least the neighbors in this area, wanna make sure that they can see the deer and the coyote
Yep.
and whatever else.
Right.
So, I just want you to keep that in mind. The last thing, and, I'm pretty sure that most of the community, shares the same concern or same appreciation, is a restriction for elders. And I know we've discussed this before, and you've said that, there is not necessarily an interest to have a deed restriction for 55 plus, but there is a genuine concern for the folks in the community that have been here for quite a period of time, that want to make sure that they have a new home. How do you feel about that?
I don't want to restrict it 55 and older to limit those that are under that, as well as it has been a financing issue in the past in terms of making them harder to finance. So I think you're going to end up, I think statistically, you're going to end up with a large majority of people in this that are going to be 55 and older. These are mostly ones and twos. We're not proposing any threes. We're going to build these all flats, go in the garage, go in the elevator, go up to your unit, no stairs, none of that. So from not only a older but also handicap standpoint, the units will be excellent for all those type of things. They're going to be built for the most part for people that no longer want to cut the grass, do the maintenance, walking up and down stairs. And I think we can show, we could even provide some statistics. One of my partners is on the phone, Carl Treishman, who may even have a better response if you allow him to speak, through the chair. Carl's spent the last 20 years of his career building mostly residential apartments and condos and so forth across the country, not only here. And where it's going in in terms of the 55 and older, or even when it's not restricted, you normally end up, the 28 that we just did in Winchester, we just sold over there, they're all, everybody in there that I'm aware of is over 55. I don't think there's anybody under that was a buyer. If you'd like, Carl, I don't know if you're on, do you want to add anything to that?
Prior to him joining in,
Yeah,
last question.
yeah,
And again, this is something that, people are posing to me and I'm sure to other members of the board. And actually, before he chimes in, I'd like to, pose, comments for the board,
yeah.
is the price point.
Where will they be?
Where's it gonna be? Because people are really concerned.
Yeah.
We have, I can tell you, an average lot,
Mm-hmm.
raw land
Yeah.
in Burlington, we're looking at 600 to 640
A lot,
a lot.
right.
That's a tear down.
Yeah, I know. The estimate, 2-bedroom units right now, I'll give you the direct answer, we're budgeting somewhere in the 700,000s today. And 1-beds could be mid to high 5s.
With it, what kind of condo fee?
Do we have it estimated?
$500.
What, 500 a month?
Yeah.
So around 500 a month. You want to be roughly like half your square footage, so if it's a 1,200 square foot unit, typically you want to be 600 or less, on your condo fees, is a kind of a very rough rule of thumb. There'll also be 13 affordable units, so the 13 will be, under state guidelines, it's like, call it plus or minus $220,000 per unit that we will be conveying those for, and they'll be restricted in perpetuity.
Are you willing to increase that 13 to a greater number?
Well, right now, the 13% represents almost 16%. So I don't know if
I get the percentage, I'm just asking the question.
It's a very, economically, I can't. I would have to go back and recut some deals in order to make it work. So if you mandate that it has to happen, respect it. I just need, I can't answer because it doesn't fit my budget.
I'm respectfully asking the question. I'm not mandating anything.
Yeah.
I'm respectfully asking
Okay.
the question.
Okay.
What they are doing, at 15%, they are doing what the bylaw requires.
I understand.
So, and, just so everyone, the other projects that have been done, I don't think any of them, other than perhaps the 40B projects, obviously, have been even close to that 15%. So I think at that percentage, they're far and above what you've seen elsewhere, so.
Again, I'm
Yeah.
respectfully asking.
Understood.
Prior to pointing additional questions to your,
The Carl, yeah.
thank you. Is there anyone on the board? Member Espejo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to say thank you to Mr. Carboni for being flexible and working with us. I can tell you're really hearing our concerns, and it's definitely not, doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated, so thank you for that. My question, all of these traffic numbers,
Yeah.
they're from the impact assessment from the March 15th? These are all brand-new numbers that were taken?
When we say taken, so the numbers that we're quoting are really what they call ITE numbers. So they're the estimates based on the use category that a traffic engineer would say this is what should be generated.
Okay.
So there have been traffic counts out there. They were done, I think, just pre-COVID. It's in the traffic report. So they went out there and did some traffic counts. I want to say it was like March of 2020 or 21, where they went out and looked at Cambridge Street. I'm sure the state has a ton of data as well. And said, these are the counts on the street today. The ITE numbers that we're quoting are, if we put in 82 units, that based on typical information of traffic, that traffic engineers will rely on, this is what we're telling you the vehicle trips are going to be. So there's no other way to project what you will do once.
Define typical, because the world's different now than it was just 2 years ago.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, no, I think that's a,
2020 versus 2022, like now
Yeah.
versus 2020.
They're actually,
Significant
Vanessa, who did the study, is actually adjusting the 2020 numbers to June 2019 numbers to try and adjust to pre-COVID. They're taking both post and pre-COVID and trying to sort of balance the two out. So there is an average between 2019 and 2021.
Can you explain how that's adjusted?
Basically, what they did is they looked at the traffic counts along Cambridge Street as they existed, I think, in the middle of 2020. They then looked at those same traffic count numbers, I think, to summer of 2019, and then they tried to use some algorithm to adjust the traffic numbers to, because now the traffic numbers are less. There are less people that are on the roads. So they adjusted those traffic numbers up so that we weren't getting an inaccurate, maybe over-optimistic view of the traffic counts on Cambridge Street. So they adjusted them to be more conservative.
I mean, I take my kids to school every day. When I took them to private school, it was a 5-minute trip, 2019. Now, I mean, it's, granted, private school, so, you know, they were, you know, in school and, you know, in the entirety of COVID. Now I take them to school, it's a 20-minute trip, and it's literally a mile and a half from one side of Burlington to the other. So I question whether or not that works out.
Yeah, we own millions of square feet of real estate, a lot of it office space, and I can tell you right now, we're still only running at 20 to 25% utilization in those buildings from pre-COVID. So where are all those people? They're home. So it's better in the suburbs where they are, but
Trust me, I understand. I manage an
Yeah.
international real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
So I've closed down many offices worldwide.
yeah,
The difference is the commercial real estate factor versus my kid's private school from one side of Burlington to the other.
yeah.
Is a different realm.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that the patterns are changing. Because
sure.
more people are gonna be at home for different hours. You might work at home and go out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon versus leaving at 7 and coming home at 5.
Well, I've noticed the rush hour during that, in that stretch
Yeah.
of roadway
Yeah,
starts at like 2:30 in the afternoon. It used to be,
Yeah.
4:30, 5 o'clock, now it's 2 o'clock, 2:30, so
right.
it's a whole different pattern. You know, I think people tend to, there's more traffic during the day with people working from their homes.
Right. What we're trying to give you is an option that reduces the amount of traffic compared to the use that's there, as compared to other uses that you might say, we could put up to 30 or 40,000 square feet of retail on this site by right tomorrow with site plan approval. We could put a medical office building, we could put this, we could put that. That's all we're trying to do, is to say, this is an option.
Right, but in the grand scheme of things, if we said, what are we proposing versus what's there right now? I mean, there's nothing there's nothing there right now.
Yeah.
There's no traffic, there's no issue. Or we can propose to have something that's more significant. And, you know, again, there's a lot of people that are talking about how it's affecting them in the neighboring properties.
Yeah.
So,
My other question, Madam Chair, can I continue my questions?
please,
Thanks. My other question was, I know you can't take a left coming out of the property. So if you're coming up Cambridge Street towards the Common, will you be able, you have to take a right coming out. So when you're coming up Cambridge Street towards the property, towards the Common, can you take a left across Cambridge Street to go into the property?
The intention was to let people get in, yeah. So if they're coming from, well, I don't mean that in a wise way. I mean, if you're coming from the high school.
No, I didn't take it, I'm just trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
you'd be able to take a left to go in. That doesn't seem to be the problem movement, because even if traffic stacks up, usually it stacks up before the light. And there's usually a gap with the light, because it's on up at Center Street.
Yep.
So if you were going in, you could go up and take a left and go in. It's more the movement coming out of the site, taking the left-hand turn, that would be the problem movement. And that's one that we're willing to make that a right out. If we
Yep.
need to force people out to go down to the high school and go through the lights at the high school and come back in, then so be it. Or if it made sense to restrict that during the, 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 hours or something. I mean, I'm willing to have that conversation.
So if I would live there and I wanted to go to Shaw's, I'd have to take a right, go down Cambridge Street, and then maybe turn around,
Yep.
somewhere where the
Probably
bank is or
high
whatever?
school. Probably the high school. Probably the high school,
Okay.
I'd say.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, that's all I had.
thank you. Member Pemba?
So, which brings me to actually my first question, which
Yep.
will come right after the fact, that I want to thank you guys as well for being very receptive, reducing the project by 16 units on a project that was not a 300-unit project to begin with. So I feel like that's a fairly substantial reduction in the number of units.
Yep.
Along the lines of Mike's questions, we had spoken before about the possibility of bringing a roadway behind and then bringing it out at the controlled set of lights at the high school, which
Yeah.
would eliminate all of the problems. Because actually, like you said, even the people coming out now may have to get into that,
Right.
controlled light, set of lights just to turn around to get into the other direction. So it would really eliminate all the problems.
So we have a preliminary memo that I didn't put up on the screen yet because we got it yesterday and we looked at it and I thought there were missing things in there, like a wetland crossing. There's 3 wetland crossings that you'd have to do to get out there. And your elevation difference, like it would be very hard to ever connect with, like, say, Kindacare, because you're down, I went down and measured it myself, you're down about 12 feet. So between the 3 wetlands crossings and that, and then the distance is about, I think it's 1,100 feet to get from one to the other. You could probably do it, you'd have to bridge a lot of it, or fill wetlands in, those type of things, or you'd have to go through the Christian school. So I would never tell you it's impossible, but I'd say it's gonna be it'd be very tough to permit and it'd be extremely expensive. I don't think we could afford to take on the whole thing to do it, and I'm happy to share the preliminary memo, with you.
Yeah.
Memo.
Yeah, because
have taken a look at it.
it's understandably, if you're not, able to absorb the whole thing, maybe there's another mechanism by which we do it, or, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it certainly would be something that would eliminate all of that whole, it's a big site.
Yep.
And, it's, whether people want to believe it or not, it's gonna be developed.
Yeah.
So it's gonna generate traffic. It's been vacant for how long? And we don't want it vacant, number one.
Right.
There's houses in there that are, literally, I think there's a do not save on one of them. They're a hazard, they're an eyesore, The site is a sea of pavement, it needs to be redeveloped, we want it to be redeveloped. But it's inevitable when it gets redeveloped, it's gonna generate traffic. So I think you've pretty much given the plan that's gonna be the least amount of traffic of pretty much any plan I think we'd be able to look at in that area. Which brings me to my next question. So, as you know, the spirit of the overlay was retail and residential. And I know what you've done here is you've tried to bring in the least impactful traffic plan that you possibly can, which would be all residential.
Right.
So the question I have is, at least for the front 2 units, if they were made, because quite honestly, and realistically, I don't think we can really expect a lot of people to be walking down to that area from the center of town to use retail storefronts, right?
Yep.
It just so the transition, a good transitional use would be a professional office, like a real estate office, or, an insurance office, a legal office, or something to that effect as the storefronts. Question I have is maybe more for Kristen, and maybe you guys know the answer to this one as well, but is there a different standard for a professional office? Because if there's gonna be rezoning here, it can be rezoned to basically whatever you wanna put there, right? I mean, you could tailor it to a use that really was a retail use that generated very, very little traffic. Maybe incrementally a little bit more than residential, but on the same scale. Is there a different standard as far as traffic and parking and all that for a professional use like that than a regular retail storefront like a cafe or a coffee shop or something to that effect? I know in reality there's a big difference. I just didn't know if there was actually another standard that you could go by. Yes.
So retail, we have a couple different, retail, kind of convenience store retail, and then office, medical office is separate in terms of parking standards. They all have different things. Institutional uses, like museums, and all get into kind of place of assembly, like how many people can be in there, and you start looking at those type of uses. We've tried to think about different types of uses and who's going to be living here, and what are kind of low traffic, kind of museum, live workspace, kind of artist space, like what are uses that are compatible and actually harmonious with those who could be living here and using those spaces, and managing them rather than like totally separate entities, and trying to think about that. I will say in terms of zoning, you're in the town center, there's a lot of different uses. You can do art galleries, you can do retail, you can do all those things. We don't have to decide right now unless there's something that's a use that we want to add that's new to the town center.
Right.
It might not exist right now,
I guess
which you know, the town center's pretty broad, so, I mean, that's the question. It's because whatever they're coming in now, and, I mean, I know they've talked about a development agreement to kind of solidify certain things, like they will be for sale units, because we can't, that's not a mechanism of zoning, in passing this. But in terms of exactly the square footage of what they're gonna put here,
Yeah.
and what's going
My
in for
question
that
is
use,
actually
we can
twofold.
talk about
One
it.
is, can we limit it to a use that is less intense? You know, like a professional office, you know, real estate office. Can we limit it, the retail down to certain uses that we know are much less intense, number one? And number two, is there a different standard that can be applied traffic-wise to those uses versus a coffee shop? Or is retail just across the board?
Yeah, well, all
You know,
food,
a
yeah.
certain number, you know.
I mean, all food's gonna be
cars.
per seats if there's, you know, and then we look at employees, so in terms of a food use, you'd look at that. But what we need to do is categorically figure out under zoning what that type of use would be. So you can't say, at least in a zoning, you can have retail, but not this type of retail or that, unless it's categorically separated. But what we can do in terms of this rezoning, the agreements we're making in terms of the rezoning, is you have the zoning language, and you have they are agreeing to X
Right.
in this kind of development package.
So they can put, I mean, you literally it could actually be limited by language that went into your documentation, probably. I mean, for that matter,
Good, yeah,
without
yeah.
changing.
I do think, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do think office, professional office of that, 2,000 square, generates less traffic
A
than.
lot less traffic.
Right.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
so that was the
And that's
piece of the question that I'm asking
categorically
is,
already a thing, so.
Yeah,
Is
but
there-
how much square footage are we talking about?
About five-
Realistically?
I think originally it was what, 4,000?
It was 4,000 square feet originally, so say no more than that, maybe it's 2,000 to 4,000.
Would you be open to doing something like, I know one thing that the community is like really rooting for is like a indoor farmer's market. Like, would you do something that, you'd be open to, like, kind of donating that space to the community?
I don't know if a farmer's market's gonna be right for this,
I'm
given
not
it's
saying-
home ownership, but open to an idea of,
To give back to the, like, maybe,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No. I mean, like, something along the lines of like, local, artisans or, again, farmer's market, like, or anything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm trying to come up with is if I put the amenity space on the end of the building, is there a way to use that amenity space?
Sure.
As community space in some sort, something like that. Now, the one thing I'm trying not to do is also drive a lot of traffic to it. That hurts my other argument that I don't want to generate this more traffic, so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. If the board likes the primary use and likes the way we're going, you have my commitment to figure out that last 2,000 to 4,000 square feet during the planning process. Whether we have to button it up by town meeting or we do it as part of the site plan, we can figure that out. What I'm really trying not to do is to have to build 4,000 square feet that I can never get any rent on for anything. Then I'm just giving it away. If there's a way for us to figure out how do I'd rather rent it as a professional office
Or
than
you
have
could
it
have,
sit vacant.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but 4,000 square feet that you can donate to the community. So maybe it's a space that, kids can have,
Tutoring sessions.
I'm sorry?
Tutoring sessions.
Tutoring sessions, or maybe it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Arts and sciences, or, just kind of something to give back to the community. That's a write-up for you.
I think if it's like, for example, maybe it's not 4,000 square feet, maybe it's 2 or something, just because obviously somebody has to build it, but it's also then the cost, there's real estate taxes, there's insurance, there's lighting and heating and all that. And
Of
if it's
course.
totally pro bono, then the residents are gonna have to pick it up. So I'd be saying, hey, buy a unit, but you're gonna have to support this, because eventually we're gonna sell the condos out. So I would love to work out a way to figure out what the right use is on that end cap. I don't think it's pure retail, I don't think it's gonna be a shoe store.
No.
And professional office, I could easily see that. That allows us to get some rent from it, it also allows it to be.
Well, that's what my thoughts are just that, is, a use that's gonna be a low-impact use, but still gonna be in the spirit of the overlay.
Yeah.
you know, a retail, but not necessarily a, you know, walk-in cafe or something that's gonna generate a lot of a lot of traffic, but something that will have a storefront look to it, like a, a real estate office,
Right.
or, something that you literally would have a, a sign, so it's giving you the streetscape that you're looking for through the downtown, but it's a good transition as well from the, strictly hardcore retail to the residential and to the.
Totally on board with it, provided it doesn't get held against me because of the traffic, and that's all I'm asking.
Well, that's why I'm
Yeah.
bringing this up, because I know you've
Yeah.
brought the least impactful traffic plan that you can possibly have, and now I'm saying, okay,
Right.
are you open to tweaking that to create a little more of the spirit of the overlay?
Let's see,
If we can do it and keep the traffic counts down.
Maybe there's a
Sure.
way to build in some flexibility into the language of the
Right.
development agreement that, provides for kind of what couldn't happen, but what might happen with some flexibility for those types of things.
Maybe an art gallery or like a Burlington museum, I don't know.
Right, so I think that like really what you're hearing from like the board is, let's be, let's open up like our minds to what this retail space could be. I mean, I don't necessarily think anyone's opposed to, again, as Member Españo said, like, we appreciate the fact that you're looking, you're reducing the project and
Yeah.
you're working with us and, there's an open line of communication. But I think like, real estate space, says the realtor, or from the realtor.
Legal space.
Yeah, you need law offices.
Or legal space from
Got
from
two
the
tenants right
attorney.
here.
Got it all covered.
I mean,
And then I'll buy you, and then I can just open the door up right in there.
I mean, there's definitely opportunity that could be there. And again, maybe it could be something that gives back to the community, so maybe it's a write-off. I don't know.
My turn.
Member
Okay.
LaRue.
Thank you. I also appreciate the changes that you've proposed. And we've all already said that, so I don't need to go into that much further, but I do still have some concerns. First of all, what you talked about at the beginning of your presentation, about the master plan and how this fits in with the master plan. What the master plan is saying that we're trying to achieve is not just more housing. It's more housing for young families and seniors who currently can't afford to live in Burlington. They can't afford this. I just want to be upfront about that, because I've actually had people calling me saying, this would be great because my daughter who can't afford to live in Burlington will be able to live there.
Yep.
No, she can't. If she can't afford to buy a 3-bedroom, 1,700 square foot ranch in Burlington, she's not going to be able to afford this. So I just want people to understand that. That is not an answer to the need for affordable housing, except for the 13 units that
Yep.
you're proposing. So I'm going to renew Chairman Rappaport's request for more than 13, understanding that you don't have to under the bylaw, but also understanding that you're asking for a zoning change, which is a big ask. And it's a difficult hurdle to get over
Yep.
with town meeting. And if you came to the table with a higher than 13 units,
Yeah.
that might very well help some of those town meeting members make their decision. So I'd like you to just consider that.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm struggling with is, we had a meeting earlier this week about being in the MBTA community and our need for housing, multifamily housing along our MBTA route. But it's my understanding that this would not count, correct? Because it's not a large enough parcel?
So, as I mentioned on Monday during the MBTA community's presentation with town council, so the statute requires 15 units per acre, it not to be age-restricted, family-friendly.
So that
It's to be by right. The guidelines that are in draft form propose the minimum of 5 acres, the 25-acre single district, and a total of 50 acres of property to be in
Along
the
there.
district overall. The comment period is at the end of March. A strong comment that we, as and many other communities have, is that we all have older towns, we have all smaller parcels. There's a lot of infill, smaller projects. These smaller projects are super hard to build in the market, so we want to encourage them. We want more projects downtown, so I don't know if the minimum 5 acres is, it's in the draft
Right.
right now.
I
I think a
understand.
lot of us are hoping that there's more flexibility if the intent is to build housing and we can build it on 4 acres or 3.5, a little over 3.5,
Right along the bus route.
why should that not be?
Right. So when do
So-
we expect to hear, when is that going to
So
be?
our comment letter
resolved?
draft, I'm still working on it, but I'll have a draft out early next week for circulation, just for a couple days to, if people are thumbs up, and then we'll prepare it for the town administrator to sign and send into DHCD. So we expect a pretty quick turnaround, because they want, I mean, the timelines are so tight here that we needed to, by the end of this year, have a plan, and by the end of next year, have zoning in place. So, so I would, and you can't really have a plan until you know the rules of the road. So,
Right.
I think we're hoping that turnaround's pretty quick.
Okay.
But one of the things we've looked at with this project and asked these guys is, if we're gonna move forward with this project, which I don't think we have to have the same timeline for MBTA communities, but we just wanna make sure that this project doesn't do something, especially in the statutory language, that we know cannot change, in terms of the by right, not age-restricted, family-friendly, at least 15 units an acre, that it meet those regulations, and then try to, figure out the rest. It doesn't preclude us from looking at projects and properties around this to then add that to the district, so anyway, it's moving this
Okay.
forward isn't detrimental
understand.
to whatever that future
Right.
plan is.
And so one of the reasons I bring this up is because, as Chairman Rappaport mentioned, we're all getting a lot of feedback from the community about this. Positive and negative. I'm hearing a lot more negative. But some of the reasons I'm hearing negative are unrealistic, because I'm getting phone calls from people that say, don't build condos, put in a farmer's market. Well, that's not gonna happen, because nobody's gonna spend that much money on a piece of property and then just put it in a farmer's market. It's just not economically feasible, and I understand that. And people need to understand that, that's not going to happen. But there's still a lot of resistance to the idea of housing. However, we also have to recognize that we as a town are going to have to add multifamily housing over the next few years, because we are an MBTA community. If this could be part of that, I think it would make a big difference for me and for a lot of other people. What I'm worried about is that we're not gonna have an answer to that in time for you, because you have a tight timeline, and we're not gonna get answers from the state that quickly, probably.
Barbara, can I just
Yes.
maybe, elaborating a little bit on what Kristen had addressed,
Yes.
answering your prior question. So I'm confident that the bylaw as proposed satisfies the MBTA communities in terms of what the requirements are relative to, it's the by right housing.
Right.
It's in a smart growth area, MBTA bus stop
Yes.
that you can walk right
It's
to.
just the size.
Admittedly, if that 5 acre minimum stays there, then yes, but I think as Kristen alluded to, there's nothing that prohibits town meeting, the planning board, from adding the adjacent properties to this site come I guess it'll be the September town meeting or a subsequent town meeting to make this site comply, if that 5 acre requirement were to stay in place. So I think you have the ultimate ability, flexibility to be able to make it comply if that's what the town chooses to do. And the site would meet all of the other criteria. So I think to Kristen's point is that, it sounds like there's a lot of cities and towns that are also contesting that minimum acreage, so.
And you're not legally combining parcels.
I understand that, I
Adding,
understand.
like,
it.
Kindicare, for example.
Exactly, I understand that.
Or rezone it.
And I think
Or add it
that,
to the zone.
because we are gonna have to be adding those multifamily units, and it's not gonna be easy to find land to do that on. So if we're adding 82 units, I'd want them to count toward the 2,700 some odd units that we're gonna have to, I know we're not building them all, but that we're gonna have in order to keep that status. So, I'm a little worried, I don't know how we'll work that out timing-wise, but that's something that's just weighing on my mind that I wanted to discuss. I know you can't control that. So I think those were my questions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Member LaRue. I think to your point, that's, what everyone's looking for, but then I guess going back to Member Mpemba, like talking about the rear exit. I mean, we're talking about, we want the buy-in from town meeting to comply with the MBTA, but then we're talking about like the traffic component to Member Mpemba's point. Member Mpemba's, point. How do we make that all happen? Because I think this is a collective discussion, like, of how, it's not just the MBTA, it's not just, additional housing, it's traffic, it's, what's the least impactful project to the neighbors, but the most impactful for the community.
Positively impactful.
Exactly, positively impactful.
Not traffic impact.
No, I'm saying,
Yes.
agreed, thank you.
I think you're looking at it right here.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we do that? Like, the amount of feedback that we're getting, as the planning board it's not really that positive. What do we do from here?
Do you mind if I ask? We've seen 2 letters. Have you seen much more have you all received a lot more?
Are you a member of the Burlington residents page?
I've seen it.
Do you want to be? Because I don't think you want to be.
Well, it's been sent to me, so I've read all of those.
There's a lot of chatter online. I personally have received phone calls as well, and people accosting me in the supermarket.
Yeah, and I think, Member Espejo, he grew up in Burlington. Member LaRue grew up in Burlington. You?
Everybody except Paul.
I'm fourth generation.
Paul's an interloper.
Yep. I mean, Paul.
He's a newbie.
Paul's the newbie? Paul's a newbie. Can we actually talk about that? I mean, that's a little off kilter right there.
79.
Happy birthday.
He's a newbie at 79. I mean, at the end of the day.
My wife says, no, it's not 79, it's 89.
We're bringing him along slow.
Yeah. So, no, I've been interested in listening to all this. One thing, or a couple of things I just made note of. There seems to be an understanding among the board that we're going to change from a suburban, single-family hometown, which we are, to a town with a lot of multifamily housing. Saying, well, you're gonna make this multifamily and so forth. About 2 or 3 years ago, we had a major discussion about the town center. And I think it was when they put the new senior housing thing in, and there was a lot of discussion about Center Street and what are we gonna do? And there seemed to be a strong interest among the townspeople in town meeting to maintain the town center that we have now. In other words, not to let things start to encroach. There's no reason we can't have a nice kind of town center where people come out, walk around, etc. Where we have some of, things with thousands of people in the town common and so forth. My intent from the people that I hear from is that they like Burlington the way it is. And if other people don't, well, that's not really our problem, that's their problem, And I think this type of town is still attractive. We are close enough into the metropolitan area, so it's very easy to say, well, put it in Burlington, We need more housing, put it in Burlington. They don't have a lot of multifamily housing.
I agree with you, Paul. The problem is that with the new MBTA, what do they call it? The new MBTA multifamily housing.
MBTA communities.
Community. If we don't add multifamily housing, we lose out on funding such as MassWorks grants and other things like that. And then they had this really threatening little line there at the end that said, and if you don't comply, there may be other penalties, ...
Yeah.
That was really ominous. So I'm
For
concerned.
175 communities, so.
I think that it's.
If we
the
don't
way
get
I
it, do
felt
we
from
really
the
want it?
presentation was that
They're
they
saying,
will
well,
force
you don't
this
get
on
this,
us.
you don't get that. I don't want it.
That's what-
I'm happy with
But that's what I'm
Burlington the way
saying,
it
is
is now.
we need to decide as a community, do we want to forego that funding? Because if we don't forego the funding, we will be forced to take multifamily housing along that bus route. Have to.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, it's not really.
Is there anything you're gonna hear in 2 weeks that's gonna change anybody's mind? In other words,
I don't think so.
you've heard this.
My mind isn't made up.
What's that?
My mind is not made up.
Okay, because that's my question, like, because if it works, we'd love to do this. If it doesn't, we're big people, we'll go do something else. I'm wondering if there's, like, we can certainly look at the end of the building and the things like that. Other than that, I'm not sure what else there is to debate, talk about. If there's issues that we can work on over the next 2 weeks, great. If not, if you're all ready to take a vote and say, you know what, I respect your, that you're not made up, then let's figure out what can we do over the next 2 weeks. But I'd love to just know, and you all may want to take what we've told you and go talk to some folks or neighbors or we will and whatnot.
I think that there's more information that we need to absorb. I just attended this session a few days ago.
Yeah.
And that had a huge impact. And it's an enormous question. Does the town want to forego that funding, or do we want to comply? And that's a much bigger question than this particular site.
Well,
But I
who
also
wants to
think,
speak, but I do also.
he's next, absolutely. But I think the other thing is, like I discussed, is there something like that retail space that you'd be willing to donate back to the community? Like, is it, is it an arts, ability, or is it a senior ability? Is there something else that, and again, that's something for you to decide, but,
I heard him say 2K.
I'm sorry?
I heard him say 2,000 square feet.
I think
I'm saying 4,000, you're saying 2,000. I mean, we can meet in the middle and call it 3.
I think if it's something that we could actually deed to the town and say, it's yours, you own it, you cover you won't have to pay taxes, I don't believe, but
That would be great.
then maybe I could think about it. I don't know if I could do 4 only because I don't know where I'm gonna park it. If I could do 2,000 of a insurance and retail and a real estate office, I could figure that out.
Again,
I don't know what you're gonna do with it.
We don't have to make a decision right now.
Yeah,
I'm posing the question to you.
yeah,
And, and just like you're saying to us, are you ready to make a decision? We're not.
yeah.
Are you ready, are you ready to make that decision? You're not. So think about it.
And I would hope that the town would consider whether that's something we might locate off this site. If it's valuable to the town, but yet it conflicts with the idea of reducing traffic in this location, it's kind of an unsolvable puzzle.
I'm sorry.
And yet, if we were to consider this.
Carl, hold on.
Can
I
you,
think you need to identify yourself.
Yes, please, for the record.
Carl Trishman, Novaya Real Estate Ventures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, am I through?
I mean, no.
You said it's your turn.
No,
And I did, and I jumped in.
No, it's your
And
turn.
And that's great. But I have a hesitancy to make major decisions as far as bringing in multifamily and so forth without town meeting being involved. And I don't know how, I think we need to get this to town meeting to make me more comfortable, because I think they're more representative of the town than we are, because we bump much more into real estate and so forth.
Well, this is
We're-
going to town meeting.
This has to go to town meeting before anything's approved.
We're just making a recommendation.
Exactly.
Well, I don't want to send something to town meeting I think they're going to reject out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple things I just want to talk about. I was in the meeting with the Middlesex Turnpike Mall Road at Monday evening, and a lot of that talk was, again, the housing versus the MBTA, and all the property you have there that can apply. So when you hear that, and then you hear this one, so, I think there's an opportunity where you don't have to do that here because of all the area down the Mall Road that they're planning to do. when I was on the previous meeting with that, I had the Macy's real estate representative in my group, and he says, yeah, we're planning to put housing there. So, with that in mind, they're already thinking of putting housing there, and then all the way up the corridor for mixed use, you had to apply to the MBTA draft proposal. So, I wouldn't rush to judgment on this one. When people were talking about what you could put here and the opportunities, what came to my mind was assisted living, right? So what to the master plan, what do we need, right? And then what would be less traffic, and what would be appropriate there, right? Because people aren't gonna go from there down to the hill and then back up to center of town, they're not gonna do that. But that's just one thing that came into my mind. The traffic counts was kind of funny. I took a note on that it was during the summer of 2019. First of all, the high school is not in session at that point, and if you're there at, when does high school start now? So I don't know if it's 7:30 or 8, they pushed it to 8:30, I think, right? You're back all the way up to the lights or past the lights at.
Way past the
Building 19.
lights, yeah.
Right, you can't get in there. So if you did traffic counts, did you do queues that were coming out of the site? And with those particular times, let's call it September, October type of time frame, or any time besides the summer, I think your count's gonna be way off about even getting out of that property anytime during the morning, within a half an hour, because everyone's rushing at that same time. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point. Just from a zoning standpoint, and again, I haven't really even looked at the zoning language of this. I've seen just the project, and everybody's talking about the project. But because of and to staff, this is not spot zoning because it could apply to the rest of the town overlay, is that correct?
It could apply to the rest, and it's not unlike uses around it.
Okay, and because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 properties, that's why it's not spot zoning?
No, it's more in line
That it
with
can play.
the ability, it's the ability that it could apply in a larger district, as well as that it's not radically different than what is around it.
Okay, so then
Family
the
next door.
moratorium that the town put on themselves for housing downtown, if particular applications come in for any particular parcel, and that gets approved, that basically overrides that moratorium, right?
Well, this is changing the zoning to allow for multifamily
Okay,
use as an additional kind of overlay piece in the town center,
all through the town center.
all throughout the town
Correct. So
center. So
instead of-
anyone who wanted to do that could do that.
So for the allowed by right housing that was there before, but put a moratorium on, this is overlaying that, which would allow that now housing back in on that.
This would allow housing back in the town center,
Okay,
yes.
and so that's why I think I want to
Have
take
to go to town meeting.
a closer
By
look
town
at the
meeting.
language.
By town meeting.
By town meeting, every
Yeah.
time it has to go, for every applicant.
Yeah, yeah.
Every parcel has to go.
Yes.
Just be this site.
Versus previously, it was an overlay, which people could do that without town meeting approval because. it was,
Previously, it was, originally it was housing, multifamily housing by right, multifamily being defined as 4 units or more, up to 25% of the total square footage in the town center was the cap on housing.
So what I'm looking at is a little bit further as planners, with how this is written, and I have to look at a little bit of every single word on it, because I think someone said, words count here, right? And with unintended consequences of applying this across the board for every particular parcel in the town overlay, with all good intentions with the overlay district, and look what happened, right? So now, to rush to judgment here to get this into town meeting, and I know that the zone bylaw committee hopefully is gonna take a look at that, and folks with detail, so that's what I have to do. Again, give myself a little more time to instead of looking at the PowerPoints, which are very nice, but actually to look at the language on the zoning, which is gonna apply to everything and can, and probably will, if it makes money to put housing downtown instead of of retail, then it's gonna be all
Everybody's
housing
gonna wanna do
downtown.
it.
Then you
Sure,
lose
yeah.
that kinda, I think you need both. But if this is allowed, I wanna see if you're required to put retail in, or if you're just gonna do all housing and then you get housing downtown, so.
Yeah.
Be careful what you ask for.
Agreed. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the board that would like to speak on this matter?
I'm gonna just quickly make a couple of points, because
Sure.
being with this downtown project is as long, well, I shouldn't say as long, I should say longer than anybody in the town.
You're that old?
It's been 30 years, yeah. Well, I started the downtown overlay between Terry's old and I, but
Brown here.
it was, what we need to keep in mind here is that, in order to create a viable downtown, we need to have some housing in the downtown. Whether we like it or not, you need housing to support the retail. I hear you with the assisted living, probably a little more benign use as far as traffic goes. However, it's not in any way consistent with what we're trying to create in the downtown. So for that reason, I just think that's inconsistent with our, with our vision and our goal for the downtown. I think the project is as good a project as we're going to get. I think back when I was on the Board of Selectmen, and that was 32 years ago, I got on, and I remember that some of the things that people would contact us about, and trust me, in all the years I've been on, there's nobody who's been more sensitive to the needs of the residents and to the thoughts of the residents and the concerns of the residents. I feel like I've gone more than most people in that direction in all the years I've been on the boards. But I can't help but think back when we were inundated when Jimmy's in the mall was leaving because everybody in the town was sending us letters and acting like we had some control over that. I mean, we don't have any, there are certain things we don't have a lot of control over, right? So one of the things we don't have a lot of control over is the fact that that site will be developed at some point in time. So as a planning board, we need to find the best use for that site. And I feel like it's been proven by just looking at the facts that if that were all retail, it would be a much more intense use than the one that's being presented to us right now, for one point. Another point is, we do need some residential properties in that downtown to support the retail. We got another site that's all retail, and I've heard one person in front of us a couple of weeks ago saying that, there's not enough retail going in over there because nobody's using it, or they're not, there's no retail going in for whatever reason. Well, it's because you need to bring, statistically, if you look at this and study these things over time, you need to bring residential properties into the downtown center, within walking distance preferably, and hopefully that's what a lot of them do. They walk, or somehow, I guess manipulate the downtown in things other than motor vehicles. But the point is, we don't have any control over whether that site's gonna be built on. It's our jobs now to find the best use and the least intense use, and the one that's gonna work the best for our vision. And I've heard a bunch of different things come about, which, people saying, well, it's not affordable. Well, if I think I heard, one bedrooms down there in the 500 range, 500 to 550 range for one bedrooms, right? Two bedrooms, yeah, up in the 6 to 7 range. It's really not, it's not feasible for us to think that we're gonna be putting everybody in a home that can't afford to be in a home in Burlington either,
I just want people to understand that because they are misunderstanding
Well,
what
I
this
understand,
is.
yeah, and that's why I'm saying it comes a point in time where we now need to say, okay, we've heard everybody with all their concerns, but unless they want to come up and kick money in and buy that property and put in there, keep it as green space, something's going to happen down there. And
Well, there is a lot of discussion among people who think that the town should purchase it for some municipal use.
Yeah, well, they also thought that about Bill 19, and that went before the Board of Selectmen.
No,
They had
I know
wanted
that.
nothing to do with it.
It's a
So,
different
yeah.
Board of
Russell
Selectmen.
already went in front of the selectmen.
We have a
and-
different
and they
Board of Selectmen.
Determined that it wasn't something that was feasible.
They've time and
This
time
site,
again
I
had,
think-
right.
Yeah, it's
So it's,
something,
it's just not, it's not feasible. And so, the people in town need to realize, look, everybody's got a wish list, but then there's reality. And so, it's our jobs to sift through all the wish lists, which may be our wish list as well. But let's look at the reality of it, because if you have a project that we think is pretty close to what would be an ideal project, and that walks out the door, and then the next project that comes in here is an all retail use, that's a by right use.
That's tough. But
That's
what
right.
what
What are we
Bill
gonna
is
do?
saying, you have to keep in mind what Bill is saying, this is not just for one piece of property. This is a change to the entire town overlay, and this could be in other places as well.
Can I comment on that? Because I respectfully, I don't think that that's accurate, and I just want to make that clear, that, I mean, what is before town meeting for this coming town meeting would be to create this zoning template, which is called the Town Center Multifamily Subdistrict.
Right.
That is applied exclusively to this piece of property that we're
Today.
talking about today.
135 to
Today.
139.
But, I mean, but for that to be applied anywhere else, a subsequent town meeting body would need to make that determination. So, I mean, I have great faith in town meeting, as I'm sure all of you do, former town meeting members sitting here, that, you know, they have the disposition and the wherewithal to determine whether they feel like utilizing this on other pieces of property in the town center would be appropriate or not. So that's why it, in our opinion, provides the ultimate control, in that town meeting ultimately determines whether, you know what, they saw what was built here, they think it's good, it makes sense, we're willing to, you know, extend it to another piece of property if it, you know, it's a proposal that comes forward, and, you know, they go through the bells and whistles that we're going through right now. But I just want to make it clear that there's absolutely no way for this to be utilized other than this piece of property unless
The
town
way
meeting.
it is now. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mark. I do think the point that Bill was making is that it's attractive on this piece of property, and it will be attractive on other pieces of property as well. Just like when the town overlay originally went in, everybody built the housing right away. People want to build housing.
Sure.
They make a lot of money building housing, and it's hard to fill retail. So I think we can expect that there will be a lot of interest in other pieces of property also putting multifamily housing in the town center. But I acknowledge, you're correct, they could not do that without town meeting's approval.
Right. So we're kind of, I know Peter, I mean, we're kind of at a critical juncture here in the context of, you know, needing to make a decision whether they stay in this to, you know, going forward or not. And I know there's just been a variety of discussion of it. I mean, we feel that this proposal makes a lot of sense. I mean, Mr. Impemba, you know, touched upon it a lot in terms of what the other uses by right could be here, you know, just looking at the past history of the site and the inability to, you know, provide a use that's functional and vibrant, but,
Well, it's also, it's just a very, as we've discussed, and I think everybody's acknowledged, it's a very sensitive stretch of 3A, traffic-wise.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so again, you know, that's what we also need to take into consideration, is what's the impact gonna be of retail in this area versus retail, you know, in the further downtown, down below the hill? You know, where you can exit and, you know, where you can sort of, you know, control the traffic a little bit better down there than it would be to do it here. It's a difficult area to control the traffic. So for that reason, you'd want to have the traffic mitigated as much as you possibly can. You want to put a use in here that's going to be consistent with the vision and at the same time be minimal impact on a very sensitive stretch of roadway over there. So I can't, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I can't conceive of anything that would be better than that in that area within our control. I mean, you know.
Agreed.
Madam Chair?
This is,
I think we probably have people online that want.
I was going there.
Oh, you're doing that. Thank you.
Yes. So, I mean, we can blame Mr. Impemba for me not being able to get baked scallops at Jimmy's anymore. So, but furthermore.
Were Jimmy's there?
And Sullivan's Tire, that was our fault too.
That's your fault as well.
Which
I
is
mean,
pride.
I have no
Inundated.
tires and no scallops, so thank you for that. Furthermore, this is a public hearing. I'd like to hear from the public. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this matter?
Madam Chair, so I've been monitoring. The first person who had their hand up was Anna, then then Sherry Ellis, I think, and then the Fosters. Where
Okay.
I think that's the.
But before we start on anything, we've talked about this several times. Some of the people who want to speak have already spoken. If there is something new that you'd like to contribute, I'd love to hear it. We all know, our planning board hearings are very long, and I try to minimize that, but I also want to make sure that, we're keeping everybody in line and able to contribute. So, just please make sure if you're going to speak on this matter, it's something new and not something that has been spoken for either in a subcommittee meeting or previous matters. Thank you. Who's up first?
I think it was Anna had their hand up first.
Yes, thank you. Anna Sullivan, Burlington Jackson Road. So this is my first ever town meeting or committee that I've ever joined. I don't know what was discussed in the past. Oh, can you hear me?
Not well, but if you guys can turn it up, that'd be great.
I'm gonna bring my phone closer. So yes, as I was saying, this is my very first town meeting that I've ever attended, and the only sole reason that I'm attending is for this condo development project in the works, where there's going to be 98 or 86 now new households. Burlington is a suburb. Statistically, we have 2 cars per household. It is about the traffic, and my question is, the traffic on that route during rush hour is already a nightmare. Even during COVID, we're still in COVID right now. What is the town's plan to mitigate any influx? And this is going to be a significant influx of vehicles on that road during rush hour. I think I read in an article, Mr. Carbone mentioned something with when it was 98 units, something of an increase of 1 car per 3 minutes. That seems extremely low for something that has, over 200 citizens living in, because 86 units, even if it's going to be 86 units, we can assume there's going to be a few people per unit. So what's the town's plan to mitigate that increased issue, which is already an issue right now? It's kind of a nightmare. As much as I love Burlington, that is my least favorite part. It is that Route 3A during traffic. So that's already an issue I don't know if it's being worked on. Like I said, this is my first town meeting. What is the town going to do with that increase of traffic?
I think that's a conversation point once we determine, what is actually going to go there. We don't really have a plan in place for something that isn't approved.
Well, and I also, this is Kristen Kasner, Planning Director, but I also want to just point out some of the things that Member Mpemba and others have pointed out of, when you look at increase, I mean, it's increase from uninhabited buildings today, or increase from inhabited if all the buildings were actively used right now, and or if there's something else. So when we're looking at redevelopment, unless there's some sort of deed restriction that you can't develop, you can do what is by right here. So it's really looking at a comparison of, having the right to do something, what is the best something here? And, lowest of traffic use is obviously nothing. Second is self-storage, and I don't think we need any more self-storage in the town center. But, I think, looking at different compatible uses and on the lower end of, between residential, assisted, those type of uses, to look at it, and also look at the roadway in terms of when we're confusing things quite a bit in terms of the site plan and a rezoning proposal. I think we're blurring a lot of lines in this discussion. But they're showing so much detail in the site plan that it's hard not to get into those discussions. But certainly, we'd be talking about, with the additional trips, what kind of mitigation in the roadway does need to be included within the conditions of approval at such time as, if this was even allowed, that we would be negotiating to make sure that there isn't a big negative impact. But overall, to Member Mpemba, it's a point, it's, you're weighing the options that could be.
Just to clarify, may I just ask
Please.
just one quick answer if you have. By right, the retail that's allowed in there, what's the count generation?
From the buildings that are there right now?
No,
Or-
from what's by right allowed on that site, retail.
So we did a takeoff that says you can fit 40,000 square feet of retail.
Yep.
You can't do any one tenant more than 10,000 square feet.
Yep.
So with that as the backdrop, 3,000 cars per day.
So 3,000 cars per day. This this use that's being proposed, the count is projected to be what?
600.
So, to the point of, the woman, Anna, I'm sorry, yeah, to that point, as a planning board member, I would way rather be sitting here trying to mitigate, you know, what was it, 600 cars a day than 3,000 cars a day. That's really what the question comes down to in my mind. I mean, there's a lot of other things that come into play, obviously, but what it really comes down to is, do we want to be sitting here mitigating 3,000 cars a day or 600? What's our preference? Because other than that, we don't really have a choice.
This is a paper tiger, sir, because what you're saying is, you know, which are the two lesser of evils. However, right now in the status quo, traffic is already bad. Whatever is going to be put there, if we're talking about commercial or residential, it's just going to increase the problem. That's number one.
That's right, but again, you need to understand, we don't own the site. It will be redeveloped.
I don't think that, I think what she's asking is there something the town can do to help with the traffic problem? I don't think she's advocating for or against this project. She's saying,
Well, I
we have a
understand.
traffic
Barbara,
problem,
I
what
think-
can we
I
do?
think the one thing that, like, again, that, like,
You can't
you know, we've heard, like, via Facebook and, you know, social media and whatnot, everybody wants to tell us what we should do with this property. No one can tell us what we can do with the property.
We don't get to do.
We don't get, we don't get to, we don't have that authority to tell,
Right.
you know, the property owner what they can do with the property. What we can say is, what is the best use for the property?
Right.
And what is the least impactful way, or the most, you know, the best way that we can promote for the property owner and for the residents and the community as a whole. And that is the job of the planning board. Everybody, you know, I don't want to say everybody, there's a lot of people that have a lot of feedback of telling us how and what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. And I'd love to say, you know what, property owner, you can do X, Y, Z with your property, and that's just not our role.
Right.
We can't tell people what they can do. What we can do is guide people on what we would like to see and how it should be, you know, how it should, you know, go within the community.
What they can't do.
And so
Exactly.
my point being, not to oversimplify it, and I'm not trying to discount your question. What I'm trying to do is trying to unmuddy the waters.
Right.
And just say, we know whatever happens down there, we have to do something to mitigate it. We have to try to mitigate it as much as we possibly can as a planning board and as a town. But what I am sitting here and telling you, to unmuddy the waters, I would rather be mitigating 600 cars a day than 3,000 cars, which would be allowed by right on that site if this project walked, not saying it's not, that sounds more threatening. If the project walked away and another developer came in tomorrow, to fully build that site out by right, we could be dealing with 3,000 cars a day.
Well, by
Right, but that's not what she's asking.
I said, this isn't for us to mitigate right now. This isn't before us. This is whether we should be doing this or not doing it. My point is this, and I just said, I'm just trying to unmuddy the waters, because we're not
We
trying
all
to
get
mitigate
that.
it right now.
We
This is
get
not
that.
our job right now to mitigate this. What our job is to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to town meeting, whether this is a good concept. And what I'm trying to do is sift through and say, it's either this concept with us in the future having to mitigate 600 cars, or not this, and possibly having to mitigate 3,000. So I don't know how I can answer the question any
No,
better.
I don't,
It's a
I
better
don't think that's
concept
the
than what
question she's asking. All I'm saying, I think all she is saying is, she's concerned about the traffic already.
As am
Is
I.
there anything that the town can do to help mitigate traffic, no matter whether it's from this project or another.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that question,
Right.
but I don't think she's advocating for this project
I'm
or
not
against
saying
this
she is,
project.
but what's
I'm just
before us?
acknowledging her question, Joe.
As am I,
Okay.
Barbara, and I'm trying to
No,
say,
you're
look,
comparing it to what could be.
well, I'm
And she's
comparing it
not
to what
asking
our
about that. She's
decision is
saying
right
the
now.
traffic is terrible now.
And we all.
What are we gonna do?
And I think we've all said the exact same thing, that traffic is horrible, and that stretch of roadway.
Agree.
And that's not before us right now. What's before us is whether we should be saying yes to this or no, and then she's absolutely right. We need to, whatever project goes in there, we need as a board to try to mitigate it as much as we can. And that will be a future meeting in the event that, a developer then comes in.
And I'm sorry to cut off, just to clarify what I'm saying is, if it's already bad right now, to put in extra 150 people there, it's just gonna make things worse.
That is what
She wants to know how
Right.
to mitigate.
And thank you for clarifying. I think, and to Member Impemba's point, and to your point, Member LaRue, I think there's two components. I think, we know what could go there. I think the public, when they hear that there's potentially an 82-unit project going there, they don't understand. All they hear is that there's an 82-unit project going there. What could potentially be there instead of, or in lieu of this 82-unit project, could be more detrimental or cause more traffic. And I think that's,
Exponentially.
Yes, I agree with that, but what I'm saying is, if you put commercial, like where I live in Burlington, there's not a lot of restaurants. I have to go to the mall, all the way on around that area. And we're talking about walkability downtown. Where are people gonna walk to? Around the town commons? There's no.
So would you rather have restaurants on the site? Is that what you're saying? I mean, because that's not a bad use.
Absolutely, something where community.
Absolutely. Well, you're gonna, with that.
If you can let me finish, where people gather.
That
not
is the balancing
after
act.
work,
Right, that's
not
the balancing act. Because if we do what you're asking us to do, we potentially could have, what,
More traffic, much more traffic.
5 times the amount, 10 times,
Not
20.
during rush hour, and it's gonna be during weekends and that sort of thing.
that could be any point in time, restaurant week, lunchtime. It honestly, like, it's literally,
I mean,
it's a back and forth.
But it's not like one or the other, but I'll leave it to that. I'm just saying, and when we're talking about walkability, putting multifamily housing there at that volume, it's not gonna help walkability. Like I said, where are people gonna walk to?
Oh, respectfully, I mean,
I just had a question, which is this. There are certain retail uses that are not big traffic generators. And do we have like a real estate office and so forth, somebody mentioned, they get a certain amount of traffic, but not a lot. And we don't have any category for that type of usage where we could say, this is a business district, but limited to these businesses which don't generate a real lot of traffic. And I don't know how we could do that, but that would be an ideal site, because it's close to the town center. People need to do a limited like that, dental office, that where people come and go, small numbers and so forth.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we could encourage the use of that site for that type of usage. Is there a zoning that we have that?
Well, that's
I
what we
think-
could explore, at least for a piece of it, but it would be, ideally, you don't want, I don't know how many, professional offices could be in that whole site, but then you're gonna fill it up with professional offices, it'd probably be empty.
Right.
So a mix, again, it comes right down to what I believe is exactly right, what you're saying. Maybe look at a couple professional offices in the front, and then the residential project behind it of what they're saying. And again, to me, it's more in line with the spirit of the overlay anyway, because I don't think that an intense retail use that far outside of the center of town is gonna be well used.
I don't either, but that's not an intense use.
No, it
So
would be.
guys, we're not gonna make a decision tonight. We do have
Right.
2 more people that wanna speak. Let them speak. We'll close it tonight. We can continue. can continue to talk, both the proponent and amongst ourselves. Who's next on the docket?
I believe it was Sherry Ellis and then the Fosters.
Ms. Ellis?
Is she still there?
Sherry,
Sherry.
speak with us.
I think she lowered her hand.
We put it
Oh,
asleep.
okay.
So the
so-
Fosters are the, I only see them on with their hand raised.
Oh, that's too bad. Sherry.
Can you hear me? This is Sherry.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you. Sherry Ellis, town meeting member, but also chair of the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee. And I just wanted to weigh in here. A couple members have spoken about the zoning bylaws, and I just want to bring this up. So we do have a meeting next week. We have not yet begun to review really the intricacies of the actual bylaw, which is what Member Gaffney was talking about. And I want to thank you for bringing that up, because this is the opportunity. This zone has been created and we've been asked to review this, and this is our opportunity to create the zone and review what we want in it. And I've heard some discussions about the mixed use part of this and about what type of retail. This is the part where the language and the words really matter. And this is what I think we should be focusing on. We get stuck in this project, and I appreciate the proponents' willingness to work on the project, make it something that we want, and work with us. But until we have the zone, a project doesn't really matter. And this is so important at this point in time between the MBTA communities and what that aspect is, and whether or not this is the area where we want this, or whether, as I can't remember who said something about down by the mall area, but the language of this particular overlay that they're proposing is critical. Do we want to put a cap on the number of residents in this area? To Mr. Vaughn's point, it's only this specific area, this 3 acres at the moment. But if we create this zone, as Member LaRue said, others will want to join in this zone. Will they be contiguous? If we have a cemetery, a high school, a town common, a historical museum nearby, probably won't be contiguous. So we have to think about the consequences of doing the language of this bylaw. And so I just wanted to bring those things up. There were a couple other points. I'm looking at my notes, bear with me. We were blurring the lines, I think Kristen said about the project versus the zoning. And we always like the pretty pictures. And I certainly appreciate, I believe the proponent has mentioned that there would be an MOU of this particular proposal, and that's good for this site. But again, I guess I just want to reemphasize that it is potential that this will expand into the other part of the town center, all of the business district. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, we have to consider that and think about the language that we want to put in that bylaw. Do we restrict it to certain types of retail for mixed use? So I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. So we will start really next Wednesday. We have our meeting, and I welcome any of the planning board members and obviously also the public to come. And we're going to work on the language of that bylaw. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ellis. Who is
This person that you said, the Fosters?
Yeah, maybe. It's Craig. Foster. One question for the builder, and then I have a couple of questions for the town. What are you gonna do if you do get approved and you can build? As an abutter to the property, my biggest worry is the fact that I'm gonna have cars going by my unit at all hours of the night without any noise mitigation. Right now, I only have to worry about Paul, my next door neighbor, and their 1 or 2 cars going down that street versus hundreds of cars going down that street, trucks during the day, deliveries during the day. Are you planning on any types of trees or fencing to mitigate light and noise for the existing units on both sides with the kinder care there and the medical unit and the other multifamily homes that are there? And as well as, is there more you can do to protect the wetlands? Because I have multiple times seen deers back here. There were deers the other day back here. And I fear we're gonna be losing even more wetlands, and those animals are gonna be losing homes as well.
So I think if you're referring to the driveway in that would be closest to your property, Mr. Foster, that one? We'll just gate it off, so there'll be no traffic. So we'll just gate it, we'll call it emergency, so we'll eliminate anything in there. So I think that's a relatively easy fix. And I think
You're only gonna have an entrance, the only entrance for 80 units will be the one by the kindergarten, basically?
Yeah. Yeah. And then as far as the back, I mean, we increased the buffer zone and the landscaping back there by about another 30 feet, so that there's a true swath back there of about 50 feet and about 80 feet to the building. So whatever wildlife is there, I think we're proposing, right now the existing building that's there is right on the property line. It's on the southern side, admittedly. But we wouldn't touch anything. When I say touch, we'd landscape within that 50-foot zone, but otherwise, we would keep it open. Some of the neighbors, I think out back, had asked about putting a fence on the very back to, just to keep, if there were lights getting, in any of these areas, we could mitigate those. So.
And to be honest, say, as an abutter, I'd like to see a fence that kind of protects our property from some of the lighting.
Yeah, we would put one there as well. And yeah.
And then this is probably more for the board, and it's a couple of questions for the bylaw and the zoning itself. But is there anything when you're writing the bylaw that you can put a rule that says you can only have X number of housing units per acre? So if we wanted to hit the MBTA, you say, what, we're worried about just having 15 houses, so we're going to limit it to that. Within this zoning, you can only have a maximum of 15 to 18 units per acre.
Yeah.
Can you limit it? I mean, we're looking at zoning right now, we can, and
You could, but I mean, again, thinking long-term as planners, like thinking about, so short answer, yes. Long answer, we do have to comply with MBTA communities. We don't know if this is going to be part of that, but, so just thinking long-term. Short-term, yes. Long-term, is that what we want to do?
well, and just,
Then the secondary question behind that is, because I know there are members of the planning board that affordable housing and the entire town affordable housing, can you rewrite within the bylaw to increase the minimum percentage needed? So instead of 15%, the bylaw gets changed to 20 or 25%. By bylaw, to build in that, you have to have 25% affordable housing.
I mean,
I think that's a state requirement, but I think as you heard and as, as we've requested, we've kindly suggested that we'd like a little bit more than what is required.
You can put a zone number.
It could be put in.
Increase it, but we might find that nobody will build it.
Right. I mean, it's gotta be economically affordable for the builder as well. But again, we can kindly suggest something. It's whether or not they're required, the requirement isn't necessarily, I don't think we can require that. Is that correct?
You can.
well, we're talking about the zoning, so we can
Make it however you want.
I mean, there's a proponent for the project here, and that's why, as we're talking about the zoning, there's this balancing act. It's what in the zoning, what are, this proponent looking to do? I mean, obviously, we have a proponent, we have a project. When we look at zoning, sometimes it's just, we're looking at, okay, what do we want to encourage?
Sure.
And then put something in place, and then to the chairman's point, is it feasible that someone would actually do it? I mean, we have zoning in our bylaw that no one has ever used, because it's just not, it doesn't work.
Sure.
For the market, and it hasn't in 30 years, so I mean, but there's also.
That's okay.
Well, if that's the point, that's okay, but if we're looking to try to encourage something, it's just that balance. What is it that we're looking for, and what is it that someone's proposing? I mean, you do that every single time with site plans. Okay, this is what you're allowed to do, this is our discretion, and then we go back and forth. And this is the zoning, we could, and we're talking about, just as Sherry mentioned, that the language of the zoning, so we're allowing multifamily housing. When you get at a per acre percentage, I mean, the reason why we try to stay away in the past of kind of the per acre was it prescribes a number of units without really understanding the unique features of the site and or the demographics that you're looking at. So do you want a mix of 3 bedrooms? Do you want a mix of 1 bedrooms? Do you want a mix of, so that's why we looked at, 4 units as multifamily in the town center originally, and then you have Burlington Heights, which has less units, but they're giant units, and you have other projects that have small units, and there's more units. So when you say, a number, it's what makes up that number?
Better off saying how many bedrooms per acre that you want than you are to have how many units.
Yeah, well, you want to promote the diversity of unit types, and not just try to, so.
And I think that my last question brings into the bigger point of, should this zoning really wait until September so we can look into some of these things? There's a lot of talk about this MBTA rule and us having to add all these multifamily housing, which probably our town services can't handle, which would be an added cost to the town that maybe the MBTA. Shouldn't we really know what the plan for the town is around the MBTA, how we're going to handle it, whether or not town services can actually handle that? And if they can, then move forward with changing zoning to start allowing multifamilies and how many and where we want those, versus allowing a multifamily without really knowing whether our town can handle what that rule is and whether it's worth us going after the MBTA money because of the additional cost that's going to be associated with the additional services of needing more police, needing another fire station, needing, more of everything within the town.
I mean, I guess if you think about it, it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, if you have more housing, you're gonna have more taxes, which is gonna be more income to the community, which can allow for more services.
Right.
Or do you say, can we do it right now on our existing budget? And, I think that, my personal opinion, I think it's something that, like, we kind of just need to work it out.
Yeah.
I think that's why you elected us, right? Because, you.
No, I understand that. And I can say, from my perspective, being in the butter, we are not opposed to a project. We just feel like anything that's really more than like 45 or 50 units would not be doable within this zone, especially when you look at the current traffic, and it's getting worse every week because people are returning to work. This week was probably the worst traffic I've seen since pre-pandemic on Cambridge Street. To the literal point where if I had to leave my house at about 8 o'clock in the morning, there's no way I would have been able to take a left turn without waiting a good 45 minutes unless I got lucky. And it would have taken me probably 20 minutes just to go from my unit.
Agreed. So to put it into perspective, I live on Freeport Drive. I bring my kids to Mount Hope every morning. I went from Freeport Drive to Mount Hope, which, is off Lexington Street. It took, normally, pre-pandemic, took me 10, 15 minutes. This morning, took me a good 35 minutes. Unfortunately, people are back, it's a blessing and a curse. We're back to reality, but it is what it is. I don't know that we're gonna be able to mitigate traffic because of the population. It just.
No, I understand that. And my last statement is on the whole scare tactic of 3,000 cars for retail. That's not an area where you're going to have a big retail store. It's just not feasible. There's not a big retail. If there was a retail company that would want to come in and build a 10,000 square foot store, they would have already bought the land. And there's also no guarantee that my neighbor in the yellow house is going to get enough money to want to sell so that the builder would have all the acres if this building fell apart.
Understood.
For me, if you look at like what happened on Building 19 right now, and yes, they're still building out, but with what they're building out in there, if that's similar size to what could go in retail here, that's going to produce a couple of hundred cars a day. It's not going to produce thousands of cars a day. And it's a scare tactic to say, well, if you don't vote to let us go multifamily, you're going to be faced with all this traffic. It's not going to happen. It would have happened already.
Madam Chair, I mean,
I was being mindful of time.
Well, there was information that was supposedly emailed us today in terms of some updated information, some revised calculations of this new revised project. So therefore, there's information that we still need to review to get our analysis to you.
Yep.
And you're at about 2 hours on this topic.
Okay, so I think, moving forward, I appreciate your comments, Mr. and Mrs. Foster. Let's table this for the next meeting, and may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue these matters to the planning board meeting of April 7th, 2022.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night, guys.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I mean, I'm sure you guys can find a green beer somewhere.
The Escadrille's probably still open.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Sorry about it.
May I have another motion, please? May I have another?
We don't need a motion, it's just one item, so it's just item D, if you want to read item D.
Yep, it's okay.
Item D is a continued public hearing. Petition to amend the Network Drive at Northwest Park Plan Development, District Zoning Special Conditions and Use Provisions, submitted by Norbloom Development Company and its affiliates, NDB Property Owner 1 LP and NDB Property Owner 2 LP. Staff, do you have any comments regarding this item?
I will certainly let the applicant do a presentation, but overall, we're really looking at, the additional square footage, the revised use, or dimensional kind of provisions, which overall, we are in favor of this concept. The pieces that we're just needing to kind of piece together is what does it mean, if we're adding this much square footage, what is the impact, and really tying together where we should be going with that, and if there's additional language within the zoning that we would want to be highlighting to ensure that we're balancing that.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, folks. Thank you for your patience.
I'll try to be quick.
Well, welcome to a Burlington Planning Board.
St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Look festive.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Barcy. I feel bad, Joe. I have the same problem with the eyes and
With the allergies.
yeah, allergies. Yeah, so if my
Allergies,
voice.
I can't even
yeah.
see them. It's a
I
crazy
have with
thing.
me this evening Christine Hung, who has the same problem, and as she was telling me, we're all
Is
commenting.
it really allergies or is it age? Or what is it?
We've talked so much planning board, let's do a little.
Verify that mine
little
are
medical.
allergies, but
And Frank DePietro, our distinguished site civil engineer.
Oh, DePietro on today.
We'll try to go through this. Next slide. I'm going to briefly summarize where we've been and some of the questions that came up we've tried to address. Just to refresh the board, the motivation for this was to grow the campus. We're almost out of space on the campus. And when you look at the campus, as we'll see in a moment, there's opportunity to grow without any impact. I do want to make one point up front. The timing of the growth is yet to be determined because it'll be market-driven. We're not proposing any changes to the PDD in terms of the regulatory process, how projects will be vetted by the planning board. We're just trying to put the square footage in place so that if the opportunity to grow presents itself, the town can take advantage of it as well as the developer. And a lot of time and effort has been put in this whole corridor between Network and Northwest Park to have a synergy between them. So there's an opportunity right now to try to pursue this, and this is why we're here. And one of the things that we're trying to do is change the definitions to make them more responsive. I think I said this at the land use the other night. In the beginning, when this was drafted in 1997, the PDD was ahead of the curve vis-a-vis Burlington's underlying zoning in terms of definitions, particularly in the last 5 years with respect to the life sciences and things of that nature. Burlington is now ahead of where the PDD was. Such things as solar, which wasn't even on the radar back in 1996 and 97, that we've tried to back into this bylaw so that those definitions essentially track verbatim what is in your underlying bylaws, the zoning bylaws. So we're trying to just bootstrap those so there's consistency in terms of development, but also consistency in terms of enforcement. When you go and the building inspector or the planning board has to consider something, it's generally advisable to have the same definitions. So that's basically what is the motivation here. And if we're lucky and town meeting sees that, hopefully we'll get an approval. You're missing my thought. Just for point of reference, there's Network Drive, the campus. I still refer to it as the Sun Campus. We used to have a penalty of $1 every time we said that, but I still call it the Sun Campus, and Northwest Park. This was the original, these 5 buildings were the original product that was done when Sun occupied the campus. Initially, it was very similar to the prior presentation. There was an enabling provision that went into place for the PDD, and then the first thing that was done was to put this in place. We're trying to, the next series of slides is to show the ambiance that has been developed at the campus. And the reason for that is that there's the expectation, and you're very lucky here because you have one property owner that pretty much owns the whole corridor. The expectation, and is a long-term holder, the expectation is that the same attention to detail and creating of the ambiance is going to be carried forward, or the town should expect it to be carried forward, as this project hopefully will be able to add some additional space. Because what this has done is created a magnet where companies want to be here because the amenities really are attractive. And we intend to have town meeting members up there to walk around the site and get a sense of what it's like to be on the site. As you can see, it almost has the feel of a college campus. Where the star is where the board recently approved the 25 Network Drive, which is where the Broad Institute and the Vericel is going to be located. That is, if you've been up there recently, it's been fenced off, and construction hopefully will start shortly. If you look in the horizon, you can actually see the Boston skyline from this site. And so that, coupled with the amenities that you have, pedestrian access down to Northwest Park and on-site amenities, makes it a very attractive campus for those who are exiting the Cambridge environment. Well, could I just go back for that for 1 second? One of the things that we looked at, if you look at the extensive parking fields that are there, a lot of those parking fields are not responsive to the existing buildings, particularly up back, and if you would coming down towards the bottom of the screen, there's a big field there. What we're proposing, any development that would occur on this campus would be in the existing parking fields. We're not taking up green space. If anything, we're going to enhance it and create it the way it, if you look at the inner core of the existing campus, we're going to try to maintain that throughout, and clearly we'll go through the regulatory process. Next slide, please. That just is the current status of the buildings. This is the 25 Network Drive, which was recently approved by the planning board, which is where, as I said, the Broad Institute and Vericel will be going. Anything we're proposing in connection with the amendments is dedicated and limited to parcel 1. Parcel 2, which is where Primrose, DCU, and Stonebridge, nothing is being proposed to be on that site. And then the residential parcel. We're also going to, I think it came up at one of the meetings, we're going to have an amendment, it may have come up at zoning bylaw review. We're going to have a substitute plan that has a better labeling system, so that's one of the comments that came up. So that will be proposed so that it will identify these parcels a little clearer. Next slide, please. Again, this shows, I like this slide because everything will be within that red line, which is the perimeter of the ring road, and it shows the expanse of parking on-site parking that is at grade. And you can see that, one, while we meet the zoning and we comply with the regulations of the PDD, it really isn't convenient for someone to be parking on the further, if you go to the left-hand corner, or some of those other fields. It works. People try to migrate towards the buildings, but it creates a lot of impervious surface that if you were standing on Network Drive looking up at the site, it's really not very attractive. Tonight's update, sustainability. I think it was brought up at the last meeting, and what is the ask, and then what the community benefits are. So, again, we use this slide to show the amount of green space existing on the site, but for the parking fields. And as I said, we're not taking up any of the existing green space. We probably will be adding green space because we will probably be forced to use some parking structures, which would result in the removal of surface parking and condense it. But the market will drive that. But you can see that there's a fair amount of landscaping in that. And the other thing that I'll point out now, because it's important to see later, the buildings themselves, if you were going down Network Drive, are quite a distance from the actual Network Drive. And on the other side, Route 3, the vegetation between Route 3 and the campus slopes down. The grade isn't shown here, but you really don't see the campus when you're coming down Route 3. So, next slide. The sustainability. It's today it is a certified LEED Gold. It's been awarded the Fitwell 2 Stars 2, which is the first campus in the country to achieve this rating, which shows the commitment of the property owner to continue to pursue that. That was never a condition that was imposed by this board or the town, that they proceeded on that. And basically, what is in the marketplace today is that the employees are the most important asset of any entity, and the employees demand it. Some of the design elements that were actually vetted and considered in connection with 25 Network and elsewhere on the campus, the PV on future garages, the solar trackers in parking lots. We're going to increase EV charges, white roofing to reduce the heat island effect, increase plantings and landscaping, and one of the reasons we want to get town meeting members up there is to show what is some of the creative and innovative things that have been done on the campus, particularly along that line, and the enhancements to the stormwater system. I think, I don't know who, Paul, you were on the board, right, when this was originally done?
Yeah, I've been on forever.
Right. I don't know, Joe was maybe on the select, but I can't recall, but I give a lot of credit to Larry Cohen on the Concom, because when this was done, Larry spent a lot of time advocating for an innovative drainage system that essentially captured the water in the back of the site, and it's almost like 3/4 of a mile
Right.
of a swale that comes from the back all the way down the front, and it was natural attenuation. And Larry would go through these long discussions, and if you look at the literature now, everyone wants low-impact design, and that was way ahead of the time. That was in the...
One of the best things I ever did on the Board of Selectmen was appoint Larry to the Conservation.
Yeah, he's still there, right?
He's still there, that's right.
but I mean, it is amazing. It was significantly ahead of the curve on that, so. These are just the EV charging systems. Again, when you get people up on the site and you see the mixture of hardscape and open space and the desire to, a sense of place that, being surrounded and yet being able to gather, it is an amazing, it's a college campus environment. This is extremely popular. The community gardens that the employees and some of the staff tend to.
And there was a discussion earlier about the deer. Apparently, the deer like these sort of garden things as well, from what I've been told.
So what are you doing up there, Frank? So again, just again, show some of the ending. Next slide. We have an extensive trail system up there. One of the things that I think came up at the last meeting, I don't know if it was Barbara, I think I asked about.
I think we've seen some of these
Okay,
slides already.
okay, move right on. All right, and again,
We've
On
seen
the
all
bear.
these,
Yeah.
the bears.
okay, one of the things, okay,
I mean, we love the bees.
keep going.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay, this is important. What is the ask? One of the things I indicated, we're going from a net leasable or net, it's net leasable, the way the limitations are done today. And when you have a campus of this magnitude, it's difficult. It's not difficult for us because we have a tracking system. But when you deal with the town in terms of how much is there, how much is remaining, and are you in compliance? So we're suggesting that we go to a simple gross square footage concept, which is just take the perimeter of the box, and that's your gross square foot limitation. Today, there's 940,000.7 square feet out there. This is permitted and approved. That's the 25 network and some other minor stuff of 305. We have an additional of 237, which gives us a total gross, say, if we were using gross of 1.483.
That's what you're taxed on?
But it's on a net basis, yes. Yep. And we're asking for an additional 466,000 square feet of development. So parcel 1 will be capped at 1.95. But it'll be an easier calculation at any time. Okay. Again, where we would, this is one concept of where you'd see the buildings potentially being put in place. It's infill development, it's the right location, and diversity and grow the tax base. If we could go to the next slide. Today, for instance, this is the tax at 5.99 a square foot, which is today's values. 25, which was recently approved, is estimated to generate an additional 1.6. If this is approved by town meeting, the rough estimate of additional tax revenue would be about 2.7. So the site, the campus on an annual basis would be generating almost $10 million a year in tax revenue. And I think that's it.
Great.
So,
Staff, do you have any comments?
Not that I haven't already said, I think it's just, we just need to understand, the additional 400 some odd square feet, what does that really translate to? I know we've talked quite a bit about, especially with the amount of infrastructure dollars coming down, how do we look at the impact? And one of the really winning equations that we've done over the last 10 years is through this corridor, through Northwest Park, with Network Drive, the Summit development, of understanding what that impact is and looking at those dollars and then rolling those dollars into 10 times those dollars in terms of really trying to look at how do we match this amount with this amount so we can really go after big capital projects. And that's really where we've seen a lot of improvement to Middlesex Turnpike. And I think the same thing can be said of what we're looking to do here along Middlesex Turnpike that, was built originally as Network Drive, as a, I don't know if you want to call it a suburban highway, but people drive really fast and it's not a friendly walking place. So what are we looking at for streetscape there, and connections of the Minuteman bike path, and just really kind of the walkability aspects, and trying to understand how impact from this development and how we can look at that to really build a better capital infrastructure, use capital in the capital plan to build a better infrastructure on the ground. So that's something we're working on with this to try to figure out in terms of zoning, what does that language look like outside of what we would talk about project by project, so.
Madam Chair, if I could comment on that, we've had a number of meetings offline with your economic development, the planning staff, the state, as well as a consultant that we've retained to look at the ability to leverage these properties, including the Gutierrez properties, and the economic development to leverage that into, changing the streetscape, the Middlesex Turnpike, Network Drive. What can we do to enhance that? So
Sure.
those discussions have been going on.
Understood, and I've been present
Yeah.
as well as Member Espaillo has been present for those. I think, obviously, we still have a little bit more work to do. Is there anyone on the board that wants to question or comment?
Madam Chair, yeah, I think, and thank you for the presentation again. What I'm really focused on, and I appreciate the activity with Middlesex Turnpike and making it a better streetscape. In this particular one, we're adding not only the 200,000 plus that you already have, you can build on that by right, but another 400,000 to get up to a total of 600,000 square feet. 4 buildings, I think you said last time, and 1 parking garage?
That may depend.
Depends on
I think you said parking garages when you discussed it, but those could be.
It depends how it's, that will depend upon what the user is and how we break it up.
So it could be multiple parking garages
Right.
here. And you mentioned it's an additional $2.7 million per year in taxes. What I really think the priority should be with, again, we have a lot of activity going on Middlesex Turnpike. I was on that call Monday evening. There's a lot of activity going on here. I think this focus should be getting the pedestrian access right over to that landlocked parcel. Yeah, and I think I asked it last time.
Yeah.
Have you looked into maybe with the economic development director about maybe some grants for that, what that might cost? Because if you're adding in, ultimately, right after it's all said and done, 2.7 million, for per year, right? Did I get that right? How much would that pedestrian bridge cost?
Madam Chair, could I respond?
Please.
We spent some time looking at that. A couple things. That, first of all, there are grade changes, and you have to make any pedestrian access, first of all, you gotta get federal and state highway approval.
Yep.
And any bridge over that federal highway or state highway has to be ADA compliant. So that when you have I'm playing engineer now, when you have that.
Doing a good job, by the way.
That spanning of the highway, in order to make it ADA compliant on both sides, you'd have to have switchbacks that would be quite extensive.
Like the Fiedler Bridge.
I'm sorry?
Like the Arthur Fiedler Bridge.
I don't think that's there anymore. I think they took it down.
The Arthur Fiedler Bridge?
Well, they took the one down.
On Storage Drive?
They took the one down.
They have the switchbacks there.
Yeah, right. But this would be much more extensive because the span is greater. Not only that, when you're going over a federal state highway, you would have what is called MEPR and NEPR, New England, and then the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. And one of the things that they require when you ask for a state permit to span that is you have to do an alternatives analysis. And they would say, well, the alternative is that you have existing parking and access to the landlocked parcel or landlocked forest today that people use. Why would the state fund $25 to $50 million?
It would depend, but yes, somewhere at least 15 million, based on, these are very, very preliminary stuff I took a look at.
I honestly, I think it would be a better use of using the economic activity here to use that and direct it to something that we can achieve, which is Network Drive, Middlesex Turnpike, and doing development along that.
Are we talking about a bridge over Middlesex Turnpike? Or
No,
Route 3.
Over Route 3?
Finally getting to the landlocked parcel. I mean, if it's not in this project where they're putting in 4 buildings and 2 parking garages, then it's probably never gonna happen. So you're saying that it's gonna cost $25 to $30 million to get that span across?
So, again, what I looked at on the landlocked parcel, on the landlocked forest, there's wetland areas, there's grade changes. You would want to have an access where the grades on either side were roughly the same, and there are relatively few spots that could do that. You would want to be, the bottom of the bridge would be at least 20, maybe 25 feet above the pavement below it on Route 3. And that means you'd end up using the handicap accessibility ADA from either the federal or the state. You'd need a switchback that would be somewhere on the order of about 250 feet to make that 20-foot grade change on both sides. Probably every 5, 6, 7 years, we've looked at this for different folks have asked about it. The last time we looked at it was in 2016. At that time, and again, I don't want to speak for the town, there was a concern from some of the public safety folks, and they wanted a bridge that could hold a small emergency vehicle, electric, like a golf cart thing, stuff like that. That would add additional width to the bridge. I don't think the switchbacks would work for the emergency vehicle. You'd have to have another ramp going up to that. The width of the bridge particularly would have to be wide enough that that could get by, and maybe some people around there. There was a concern about that's the only access to the site, emergency access. There are other accesses that would not, you can go through Lexington and Bedford, but they're not a vehicle access. And then when I was looking at this over the weekend to prepare for the meeting, what I found on the internet, this is one of the most widely publicized dirt bike areas in this part of the country, apparently, or at least in Massachusetts. And I've talked with folks who have had close encounters of the dirt bike kind and have been over walking that area. So again, there's certainly something we can take a look at. The numbers I had for a very small pedestrian bridge was probably on the order of 15 million, and it would take a number of years for the permitting. You'd have to do a relatively detailed structural geotechnical evaluation to go over the bridge if you can get there, and then construct it. The wider bridge would be in the $20 to $25 million, and these were very, very preliminary estimates. Again, this is the price of a bridge is, so many, $100, $1,000 per square foot, that type of thing.
And even if you could get it designed, to get it approved, I'd be very, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think you'd ever get it approved by state and federal. But as someone pointed out to me, even if you could get it approved, when you landed on the other side in the landlocked forest, the state or federal permit would probably require you to make a lot of those trails handicap accessible. So that would mean you'd be making some major alterations to the landlocked forest, and frankly, I'm not going there, so. But
Who told you that?
I spoke to an engineer at another, another engineer.
There's more than one of us.
Because we were looking
Oh,
at
even better.
something out in Marlboro on a project, so. But again, I would leverage. Huh?
Cheating on Frank?
Yeah.
He's understandable. But I honestly think leveraging the economic activity to do something that I think you could get approved that is town-driven, I think would make more sense. But it's a good idea. I mean, we actually at one time looked at tunneling, but that doesn't work either, so.
Anyone else on the board have anything else they want to comment, noting the fact that we are going to be continuing this to next meeting?
I would just say, forget about that. I'd probably spend more time over there than the whole board put together. Nice place to walk. You can just drive under the Route 3, pull up. There's a high tension lines go by.
Yeah.
And there's a nice trail along high tension, because they have to keep that open and
Yeah,
so
I've been
forth.
up there.
This place is to park. And it's a nice walk. You walk all the way down to Bedford Street and so forth. Delightful. And to me, to spend this amount of money and to think by the time with the grades and so forth, that you start in Burlington and go up and over Route 3 and get down the other side, you're gonna be too exhausted to walk anymore. No, really. No, it's,
Not when you're 79.
yeah.
I've never seen, I've never seen dirt bike there, though. You ever seen dirt bike there?
Occasional, but not very often. They're not. At one time, I think when it originally went, the dirt bikers have all their own access to, where all the trails are in there. And at one time, when originally, there were some dirt bikers over there, but I haven't seen a dirt biker there for, no, no.
Okay,
I mean,
thank you, ma'am.
I feel like I'm missing out, because I love to ride, I'm a dirt bike kind of girl.
There you go.
But
Is
I
there
think-
anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Seeing no one, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of April 7th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
6-0, the motion passes.
Thank you for your time and consideration. And
Have a good night.
one request, when you see Todd Fremont Smith, tell him I did okay.
Will do
Not
that.
as glib, but I did okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
He's a
Happy
winner.
St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Item E is a public hearing, application for approval of a special permit pursuant to section 4.2.6.2, convenience food stores, drug stores, retail stores for sale of beauty and health aids, smoking supplies, periodicals, none with the sale of food intended for consumption on the premises of the zoning bylaws. 226 Cambridge Street, Burlington Smoke Shop, Inc. is the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to ratchet down the size of the projects here a little bit.
I appreciate that.
This is Mr. Patel. He's the proprietor of this project. He's got a lease with the landlord, subject to him getting the necessary approvals that it's required to get, mainly the special permit and also insignificant site plan waiver. The proposal is for Burlington Smoke Shop. It's going to be a small retail store. Like I said, it's a 2,300 square foot parcel in the town center, formerly the site of the Cambridge Savings Bank. Mr. Patel also runs a convenient mart over in Billerica, and he opened also a Beverly Smoke Shop last year as well. So he has some experience in the business.
For the record, can you share the address of the other properties that he maintains? The other business he maintains?
The one in Billerica?
Yeah.
Turnpike Market.
Turnpike Market.
Okay.
How about Beverly?
Right on Notting Lake, it's 509 Middlesex Turnpike.
And what about Beverly?
Beverly, the address is 445 Rantoul Street.
Red Hill Street, yeah.
It's across from CVS.
Thank you.
So, as I said, he's got experience in the retail business of these types of facilities. Plans on being open for typical retail hours, 9 to 9, I think is his plan. Sells primarily tobacco products and supplies and that type of thing. So, in my opinion, it's a fairly straightforward request. Bylaw requires a special permit. The only input that I received from the town engineer was a request to do some sewer calcs, which I supplied her with, and she was satisfied with that. So, Madam Chair, we're here tonight to answer any questions or concerns the board may have, but our hope obviously is that the board would look favorably on Mr. Patel's request, so he can get started on his build-out and hopefully open up his store.
Thank you. I mean, I think personally, I'm not a smoker, so to say, but obviously it's a legal concept. I think that my concern, first and foremost, is, that that space is right next to a karate studio, a yoga studio, ice cream shop. I mean, I'd hate to see a hookah or something, being displayed in the window. So I'd like to think that it might be more of like the cigar and smoke shop, more of a, I'm gonna sound like a prude, but I think, more of a, just a kind of a very conservative storefront. And to the same point, I would feel like if it was a liquor store, I wouldn't wanna see a bright purple, vodka bottle displayed in the window. I mean, while it's legal, that's a very family-friendly area. So again, I may sound like a prude, but I'm also a mom of 2 toddlers, so, or 2 little people. So that's my 2 cents. Anyone else?
I love Turnpike Market. Couldn't you put a mini Turnpike Market in there instead?
So many requests daily.
That's my only comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Turnpike Market is great, and the
It is-
beer
it's
selection
great.
is fantastic, by the
For
way.
sure.
Thank you.
My question about some of the products, are you gonna be selling like, I don't know the other name for them, like the bongs and stuff and like other things, and I never thought I'd say that at a planning board meeting, but I don't know the other name for them. Are you gonna have that kind of stuff, the smoking apparatus?
We call it a glass accessory, simple. And going back to Brenda Chairman's question, concern, displaying anything on the window. The windows are, I think, same size as these. And we don't have plan to put anything on the window. Which, one other thing you bring it up, we operate Turnpike Market and it's a liquor store, but it's also really good food in there.
I've been there, and I think
Great
it's
food.
excellent. But again, I'm the
We-
mom of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, so I don't want to bring my kids to go get ice cream and have a smoking apparatus hanging out in the middle of the window and say, "Hey, Mom, what's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Go ask Attorney Murphy."
No, your point's well taken. As Ms. Patel, there's not gonna be big display picture windows, if you're familiar with the building. They're not, what's there for windows is there. They're not, it's not like the front of, I don't know, pick a large retail store where they're all windows. And he understands your point, and he certainly has no intention of turning this into something like Hampton Beach. But it's a legitimate retail store. It's permitted under the bylaws.
Understood.
He runs one in Beverly. You've all been to the Turnpike Market, at least some of you have, and so you know that he runs a good establishment.
I mean, I'd rather see that than.
I haven't been up to the Beverly shop, but if you run a good establishment, you run a good establishment.
Understood.
He's a responsible business owner. He's not here to offend people. He wants to make a living. It's costing him money to do this. So clearly, he's not going to do something that's untoward or is going to create bad feelings for him and the community, because that's bad for business.
For sure.
So I think he understands your point, and he understands the comment, and I can say with a fair degree of certainty, knowing him a little bit, that he's not going to do anything crazy. Having said that, it's hard to somehow regulate what color bottle he puts in the window, because you might not like purple, but somebody else loves purple, you know. So I'm just saying it's kind of a slippery slope when you talk about that. If you look in the window and you can see his counter, and behind the counter, there's something that he sells in there, well, that's what he sells in there. But there won't be anything hanging in the window if that's the position.
I mean, I'd love to see it called, I don't know what you're gonna call it. I'd love to see it called a cigar emporium. I mean, I just think that's a little classier. I don't know what you're gonna call it. Just a suggestion. Again, obviously, like, we can't tell you what to do. But just, again, suggestion.
Point taken.
I think one of the things, because this is a special permit, one of the things that we're supposed to consider is what the benefit is to the community. And that's something that, all joking aside, I struggle with, because I'm not sure what I would say is the benefit to the community of having another smoke shop. We have at least 2 that I know of. So that's something that I'm going to have to wrap my mind around. And if you have any suggestion as to what the benefit is to the community, I would be open to hearing it.
Well, I mean, benefit to the community is a nebulous term, I guess.
Yes, it is.
It's a benefit to the community to have an empty storefront, have a viable business in it. That's a benefit to the community.
Fair enough.
If you're gonna go up and down Cambridge Street and Middlesex Turnpike and the Mall Road and all the other commercial venues in town, and grade each commercial commercial tenant and as to what their benefit, individual benefit.
Well, they're not before me, though. Only this one is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's a hard thing to measure, Frank.
Yes.
Like I said, we have a viable business owner with a track record of running a good establishment, who wants to run a business in Burlington. He wants to invest money to do that. We've got a vacant spot right in the center of town that if it's vacant, that doesn't do anybody any good. So that's I'm not a smoker. I've never smoked a thing in my life. So I'm probably not gonna be a customer. But there are people in town who,
I mean, you are a customer, you're representing him, so, I mean, that's fair, but
actually, he's my customer. But the point being is that because I'm not a smoker, and maybe some of you aren't smokers, doesn't mean that the product that he's going to be selling, which is a perfectly legal product, doesn't benefit other people in town who do want to buy that.
what's the storefront gonna look like? How is he going to change the storefront? Like, the pillars are there, you know, as you know, our goal is to have more of a colonial feel throughout the town center.
The plan is, and I think with the application, there was a copy of the proposal, but the only thing that's going to change is the front door that's there is going to be replaced by a glass front door. But the
Clear front glass
we're
door?
looking at it now, yes.
Oh, did I?
So right now, it almost looks like windows, so we're changing that.
Yes, there it is right there, Madam Chair. It's just more of a retail entrance than a
Is it,
We're actually going the other way. We're trying to go
mean,
the other way. in the
yeah,
downtown.
I feel like,
Well,
that
but again, I mean, you've got an ice cream store with a glass like that because people want to see and what's, I venture to guess if you go starting from one end of that stretch down to the other end of the stretch, every door looks something like that.
Yep.
But they haven't
it's-
changed them during the overlay.
I mean, we're also
So
talking
they
about
didn't
like,
have those doors during the overlay, so.
I'm not sure that's the case either, but the point being, it's a retail establishment.
it is, but we're talking about ice cream to hookahs. I mean, like, really? I understand it's a legal concept, but when I walk my kids down the street and they look inside a retail store and they say, oh, what's that? Oh, that's chocolate chip, it's mint whatever, Reese's peanut butter cup, versus a hookah, a bong, and a pipe. I mean, and a vape. Like, I'm not saying it can't be there. That's what I'm saying. I'm just, again, my recommendation is let's make it more a little discreet. Let's class it up and say it's a cigar emporium, it's a smoke shop emporium, it's something else, and then kind of put it behind closed doors. It is what it is, but it doesn't need to be displayed publicly. At least that's my personal opinion.
I mean, my thought is along the same lines, if I could speak, just.
Please.
Being the overlay, I feel like that's, it's probably one of the only ones that existed that complies with the overlay as it is, and I don't wanna, I have a hard time going backwards and taking that out of there and, not, and like you said, it makes it a little more discreet. It sort of brings, whatever's behind those doors makes it a little bit more, within the vision of what we're trying to create in the downtown.
Absolutely.
We're trying to create less of the, stock, retail glass door look and more of the quaint, smoke shop, whatever it is, whether it be a smoke shop or a cafe or, something with the colonial. It's got a beautiful entrance to it. It'd be a shame to remove that, and I don't see that would do your business any benefit, really, to be honest with you, to change that front area like
I
that.
mean, I could totally see, like, again, cigar emporium, put some like nice chairs in there, put like a
Some
humidor,
window boxes.
window boxes, like, it could be a pretty classy establishment. Remember Espejo?
Quick question, I'm looking at your Facebook page for the Beverly store. It's 21 plus to enter. Is it going to be the same here?
Yeah.
21 plus to enter?
You can enter unless you're 21.
Okay.
The doors are locked, so.
And I'll tell you right now, that big
Was a
sign, the
Yeah.
neon sign that says Beverly Smoke Shop, probably not going to fly in our town center.
No.
I saw that too, I agree with you.
Just because we're trying to make it look.
Discreet, local, just, Anyone else?
Do we have any ability to have that happen? Or does he just go in and put whatever he wants to in the
Well,
storefront?
it's a special permit.
It's a special permit, so, it's,
We have discretion.
And it does fall under the overlay as far as the.
Yeah, no, but it looks nice now.
Changing any
Yeah.
doors would trigger the overlay down in the downtown anyway, so, I, from one, would rather see that entrance remain as it is and actually add a little bit more quaintness to the front, if you can, with some window box and some flowers. Nice flowers.
Place to tie your
Flowers of not of a THC content.
Place to tie your horse.
Okay, so, buds, thank you. All right, so I guess you're hearing what we're saying.
Yeah, and I just had a very quick discussion with my client. He's more than happy to keep the colonial look with those doors.
It saves money.
Yeah, there you go, there you go.
Well, that's perfect. It's a nice entrance,
Smokers don't
with the
care. I mean,
woodwork and the doors
I was a
and all
chain
that stuff.
smoker for 20 years. You're gonna get your cigarettes somewhere, and, you can put
works too.
flowers or anything
People who are
else.
going to Shell aren't going here. Like, it's a different animal. Again, I think you've kind of heard like what we're looking for. We're looking for, at least I am more of a classy establishment, and I kind of think the remainder of the board feels the same.
We would be amenable to a condition that requires him to keep the front entrance as you see there.
Can we also put in a requirement that we're not gonna put in any questionable paraphernalia in the windows?
Well, I'd like to take a little road trip to Beverly myself and just walk around, see what's there and see what we're up against here with
Mike's got it
regard to.
online right here.
Yeah, Bill can see it.
No, I mean, like actually go there and
Okay.
I'm already online.
I mean, we're walking down Vegas Boulevard.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, that's what I'd like to do, to check it out, because it's a special permit, it's gonna be in the benefit of the town, and
Sure.
that's what I have to make a decision on. Beverly's a bit of a different town, than Burlington, and, the benefit of a head shop, a smoke shop, is, I'd really want to just see what he's already got there in Beverly, see what works for me here from a.
Well, we
from a
are-
benefit
Sure.
to town standpoint.
Yeah, we are
Like any,
continuing.
like any special permit.
Yeah, what are you selling here? Are you selling cigars, or is it? I mean, if you're selling something out of there, we want to know it from you too.
I'm selling
I mean,
We know you're selling, Attorney Murphy.
what are you selling out of here?
Do you sell
I can
cigars?
show you the photos of Beverly if you want to see it.
No, we've seen
he's gonna-
that's not really a good thing that you want to pitch to us, because we're
No,
not
I'm
really.
just showing you the actual shop pictures.
No, I mean, I'm saying like, looking at the exterior of the Beverly, shop.
So the signage we are aware of, every town has a bylaw of signage. The town district or the overlay district doesn't allow neon sign. So we'll stick to, I guess, small sign like the next door neighbors.
Former ZBA member, by the way. I get it.
We'll probably have to go to the ZBA for the sign, and obviously that's not gonna fly, so.
Current,
Put a sign together, can you put the whole picture together for us and then
Yeah.
give that to us and show us and let us see the whole thing together with the front area, with the sign and the
so
whole.
I mean, I'd like to see the windows kind of like either blacked out or, just very, again, very tinted, discreet.
I think they're already tinted.
Awnings.
Black awnings coming down.
The window's already tinted, I think, if I'm not mistaken. The bank already did it that way, so we'll keep it the same, keep the entrance same. The inside towards the left, when you walk in, that's where our checkout area and all the product will be displayed on the back wall. So if you see the far left window, next to the barber shop, that window, the backdrop will be all tobacco products. Checkout on the front, so picture pretty much, this is my counter, back wall. The retail area is gonna be a glass display cabinets with products on it. It doesn't flash or like attract people from going on the Cambridge Street to pull in, because it's like far away. And on the right side, the right wall, the far light window over there, that's where the glass accessory and everything's gonna be. on the wall, not on the window.
And those are all tinted.
Yeah. And we can extra tint it, I don't know.
I mean, I like it. Again, my typical mommy-daughter day goes from the nail salon to the ice cream place, and then she wants Chinese noodles, what she calls it, so over to Ginger. So we go back and forth in front of that place. I really don't want to explain to her what a hookah is at 5 years old.
We're gonna have to add the smoke shop to that.
I mean, yes,
When
sweetheart,
she's 21.
here's your hookah, congratulations.
So how do you, is it a buzzer, it's locked all the time, you have a buzzer to get in, or?
By Board of Health law, most smoke shop, most towns, you don't just go and open and walk in. So when you try to open it, it buzzes inside, and then we release it, and then you're allowed to come in. As soon as you come in, the first thing we ask is your ID. If you don't have ID, you can't walk in. Well, we have to send you back, you already walked in, so. They don't show the ID from the window, we have to see it in person physically. The existing Cambridge Saving Bank was a conference room or something inside, was all glassed up. We're gonna keep the room the way it is. So when you walk in through that white door, it's straight back, and we're gonna turn that into a cigar room. There's already a door there, and it's all glassed room.
Yeah, it's
So a cigar room to smoke or a humidor?
Humidor, we're not a lounge, so everything we sell, it's to go only.
I think it would be great, so, you know, again, we're gonna continue this matter to April 7th. I think it would be great to give us a floor plan, to show us exactly like kind of what it's gonna look like. If there's tint there now, let us know what it looks like. If you can tint it more, kudos.
We can spend the money on the door to tint, it's
I mean,
easy.
but again, you're hearing what we're saying.
Yeah, of
So, I think, if anyone else, does anyone else have anything to say?
Well, if you could just more, get us
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
going
a
there next.
picture of, like, maybe show us the sign, a
yeah.
nice classy sign.
The
and
exterior,
then
the interior.
anything you wanna do to the outside, if you
Yep.
wanna put some black awnings or some shutters or things, that, make it quaint looking and whatever.
Bless you.
But it's implied.
Flower box, whatever, give us the picture, maybe we can get a picture of that all ahead of time, at least
That'd
with
be
the
great.
sign and everything,
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this matter?
Don't see anybody in the participants list online.
Great, moving on. May I have a motion, please?
Just real quick, just from the sign standpoint, we'd encourage you, to look at the 3A guidelines and maybe have an externally lit sign.
Yep.
You mean some, like some gooseneck or
Gooseneck,
something,
yeah,
yeah?
versus an
Like a
internal.
wooden sign with some gooseneck or, something that'd be really kinda nice looking.
And I think you can reach out to staff and they'll guide you accordingly.
We
Chair, I'd
reach
like-
out to Lexington Sign, and they suggested normal sign with a backlit, nothing flashy.
Reach out to
Reach out to
staff.
They'll
They'll
show
help
you,
you.
they'll show examples.
Madam
Be
Chair, I'd like
careful to, just quick, just be careful to not over tint. I mean, you don't want that nightclub effect where
Oh,
it's
no,
like,
no.
you can't see anything inside and it's like,
Again, they're gonna reach out to staff and they're gonna guide
yeah,
you.
I'm just, wanna
Madam
make sure
Chair, I'd
you
like to make a
agree.
motion to continue this matter to the planning board meeting of April 7th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair,
folks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take items 7F and 7G together for discussion purposes.
Item F is a public hearing, application for approval of special permit pursuant to section 1.7.21, storage and disposal of oils and fuels, petroleum products, including storage for on-site heating purposes of the corporate center plan development, PD zoning district provisions, 10 Corporate Drive. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Item G is a discussion, application for approval of minor engineering change, 10 Corporate Drive. The Gutierrez Company is the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening,
Again.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Robert Buckley, Reamer and Bronstein, Scott Weiss and Gutierrez, Christine Hung from Reamer and Bronstein, and Frank DePietro. A few months ago, you approved a special permit for the use of this building, 10 Corporate Drive, to reposition it to a life science use, and that permit was granted. We're here this evening for two things. One, to make some minor engineering changes to the approved plan, basically to enclose the existing loading dock, put a pad in for the generator, and some landscaping changes and some electrical service changes and also to seek a special permit for fuel storage for the generator. Pretty straightforward.
That's easy peasy to me. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Just staff.
Staff?
I just have very minor comments. In terms of what they're looking for the loading dock area, they're proposing trees on the Cambridge Street side. The loading dock's kind of up, you can't really see it because it's up past the retaining wall, but just the trees that they're putting there just to make them evergreen, not so they're better buffer. The other is that they're proposing some spaces to be removed in the northern section of the parking lot. And we would like, if you're gonna remove some pavement, we'd like to do it a little bit more on the street-facing side on the lower parking lot where there's, where you actually can see into the parking lot a little bit more to just enhance the streetscape vegetation. And that is it. Otherwise, I'm good.
Great, and this removes,
We're fine with those.
I'm sorry?
We're fine with those.
And you're removing those Conex containers, right?
Next
Oh, that's the
application.
next one.
Next one.
Oh, I was getting excited. Okay. All right, fair. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns?
I'm just taking a quick look at the plan here. So the moving these over Corporate Drive and just saying where Cambridge Street coming in on there. So staff, you're saying instead of over, right when you come into Corporate Drive, the spaces, you're thinking of,
Even actually more south, not even, kind of even further down toward Landana or
over down here right on
Landana.
Cambridge Street, right down here?
Even further down,
Oh,
it's not shown on the plan, but the area where you can, where you literally can, it's almost not exactly at grade, but before the retaining wall starts.
Joe and Pimblewall, you were the one who, I remember that.
I fought for that one. Just to.
Good job, did a good job over there.
Yeah, I don't know, Liz, if you wanna show just the aerial?
I can try
Pop
to
up a Google
do
map of that.
something
And then,
over
so I'm
here.
just looking,
Yeah.
I'm trying to see where the building is here. Oh, here it is, it's over here, okay. So you're putting a generator on the Cambridge Street side? Trying to look at what you're doing. Concrete side, concrete
Yes, it's
pad.
on the, in the area of the loading dock, but on the Cambridge Street side, that's up past the retaining wall.
It's not visible from
Not
Cambridge.
visible.
It's not visible.
So you're down at the bottom here? Trying to see where you.
So, Liz, well, actually, if you're looking at that, where you're scrolling, see the spaces that are kind of head into Cambridge Street?
This,
That area is where I would say we remove some spaces and add more additional green there versus up at the corner where no one can see it.
Yeah.
And then the loading dock area, Liz, if you can zoom in a little bit. And then, certainly, and those spaces along the building are all being removed. Those will be, anyway, I'll let the applicant describe what's happening.
Okay, and the generator's going where?
in
You're
this
putting
area, where
additional-
where he's
right there,
removing the
We're
spaces.
removing those, okay, and so then there's a dumpster there too, it looks like, right? So if you can put yourself over on the other side and see what that looks like from Cambridge Street, put your little yellow guy over there. There you go, and let's see what that looks like. So that's the Impemba wall.
That's the Joe and Pimblewall.
If you scoot down a little bit, I'm just trying to see if I'm coming up the hill.
Yeah.
If you go over to the right.
I was gonna say stellar wall.
Yeah, it's fairly well screened.
Now, now go up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
toward
I'll
the
go
building.
north on 3A just a little bit.
Yep, kind of,
There you go. And just blow it up a little bit if you can.
Oh, sorry.
Zoom it.
and then, okay.
And as part of the, Madam Chair, if I may, Scott Weiss with the Gutierrez Company.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Gaffney, we're also proposing to add planting as indicated along that edge as well to provide further screening. And we're happy to, other than probably a shared requirement that we want it to be local native planting, and drought tolerant planting, so it requires less watering.
Yeah.
Other than us sharing that requirement, we're happy to work with staff, to basically field locate and set the plantings.
So where are you talking with the plant? Are you talking about along where the fence is, where the wall is, or?
Basically in between where the trees aren't located right now, to provide some additional screening in there.
What if you did like, full-fledged trees along where the fence is, out where the street is, creating like kind of a streetscape with the trees? That
Other than probably, and I'm sure Frank can comment about not getting too close to behind the wall.
The root system.
Because then you damage
Right,
the wall,
without-
but
sure,
a little
absolutely,
bit further
yeah.
back, we can.
Sure, you could, the only other item though, you can see.
We don't want to damage that wall.
Right.
That was a controversial wall.
The trees aren't gonna, the trees aren't gonna screen as much because they're lower by several feet. We thought if we put them a little bit higher up there, it would be more screening of the building part of it from the roadway. But
Just
in
thinking,
that area, we can
if you
put them.
If you put trees along the street, it would create a nice streetscape, but it would also divert your eyes away from the area up above. It would kind of tend to, if you spaced them out fairly close, not on top of each other, but fairly closely, I think it would take away any vision that you would have towards anything in the space up above,
It would look nice.
Yeah, I
So
think
the
it would-
evergreens on the top of the hill, and we'll carry the flowering pear from Mercedes up the hill?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, more of a
Couple
tree, a
of them.
pear or something that, it doesn't have to have deep roots, it doesn't have to, more of like a streetscape kind of tree.
Pear, the flowering pears
A
are beautiful.
flowering pear, nice.
The raspberry bush is delightful.
Yeah. I mean, that's what my preference would be, but I don't know, but the rest of the board.
We want to enhance the streetscape appearance, so
Yeah.
we don't want to, I don't think you can see a lot of that area already, but we want to enhance it, so we'll certainly work with staff, to add some evergreen screening and some flowering trees as well.
And maybe some ivy spilling over the Impemba wall.
Damage the
All
wall.
right, this is a public hearing. Yeah, please do.
No hiding the wall. So you're adding, it looks like you're adding 5 concrete pads here. And there's the long one for the generator. What's the other ones for?
The large concrete pad, it would be for the generator. The electric company has indicated that they will require 2 pads for the upgraded electric service to the building. So the 2 square pads closest to the loading area would be those. In doing so, we hope that we can then remove the existing transformer that's on site. So, but the way they have to do it is you have to bring in the new service while the old service remains intact. And then the other 2 pads are really to allow for tenant generator equipment as further backup if needed. So those are really placeholders if needed.
So we're permitting 1 generator, but if a tenant needs a generator, you guys are gonna come back in front of us.
No, you're permitting the fuel storage.
Fuel storage.
In general,
Storage.
so therefore, the diesel fuel availability and use on the site.
Is that,
So 3 generators or just 1?
Well, there's 1 proposed right now, but the fuel storage, you're permitting the allowance of having that type of use.
how
But if we would've
many in
changed the
total?
pads, If we would've changed the pads, we'd have to come back.
Right, right, but how many would this specific pad allow, how many generators would this specific pad allow for?
So there's 1 generator proposed right now. There are 2 extra pads shown at the moment, just so that all of the impervious area is identified for the.
So 3 in total?
Yep.
And are those gonna be screened in?
All of it's gonna be, in addition to some of the plantings here, and I think you can see it on the plan, there's some additional smaller plantings that will be along the edge of where those are across the driveway closer to the building to screen it from the driveway itself. Yes.
Chair, real quick.
Please.
So from a volume standpoint, with the storage of the fuel, is there a limit on that, staff? Because now, we're approving one generator but it seems to be, is there no limit on what you can do, and then just, they can say they can pop in the two because they've got this approved anyway?
There isn't a limit on the diesel fuel, but in terms of the minor engineering change, if what they can fit on the pad that's shown, they couldn't put more generators other than what's shown as the applicant mentioned.
So they're gonna put,
So
they're
you
approving,
could-
we're approving three because they're putting the pads down in
Yes.
it's an unlimited storage for that. Elizabeth, can you, turn around and see just what's across the street from there? 180.
It's an auto dealer.
Okay. Just wonder if there's any residents there with 3 generators cranking,
No, it's the Kia and the.
That's a Kia.
okay.
It's all commercial.
Well, and we would require the sound attenuation as we do just in general for, even if you're walking along Cambridge Street, you don't wanna have noisy generators.
So we've had this discussion before as well, and the generators were requested, but natural gas wouldn't make more sense?
The problem with the life science, natural gas can be interrupted, and you can lose service.
It's like an earthquake or something?
Well,
What do you mean, like a?
A ruptured line like you had in Danvers recently, or
Right.
a few years ago. And you can't afford to have the service interrupted, so they go with the diesel. Same at Leahy. Leahy
Right.
is all.
That's, I remember that's why they went with that ultimately, right? Because I guess there was a scenario by which you could interrupt the natural gas somehow.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment or on this matter?
I am not seeing anybody on the participants list on WebEx.
Thank you. We're approaching 10:45, and I know everybody loves our late-night planning board meetings.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Madam Chair, I'd further like to make a motion to approve the request of the Gutierrez Company for a special permit pursuant to section 1.7.21, storage and disposal of oils and fuels, petroleum products, including storage for on-site heating purposes of the Corporate Center Plan Development District zoning district provisions at 10 Corporate Drive, subject to the terms and conditions contained in Exhibit A as amended.
And also, you'll be working with staff on trees and whatnot.
Second.
Yep,
That was
that's
my
the way it's
amendment.
written in the.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Madam Chair, I'd further like to make a motion to approve the request for approval of a minor engineering change for the property located at 10 Corporate Drive to allow for the enclosing of an existing outdoor loading dock, relocation of the trash compactor to a new pad on site, relocation of fire hydrant, and installation of 5 new concrete utility pads, and the removal of 16 parking spaces for an overall net reduction of 1,370 square feet in impervious surface, as reflected on the red line site plan entitled Minor Engineering Change, 10 Corporate Drive in Burlington, Massachusetts, prepared by BSC Group, dated February 22, 2022, consisting of one sheet, subject to the following revisions, terms, and conditions as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, folks. Thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Okay,
Now
guys.
you're on page
We're at the end.
12.
Yes.
We have one more, and the applicant for this application is on WebEx.
Oh, okay.
Page 12, number H.
Item H.
Yep.
Good evening, folks.
Hi, good evening.
Item H.
Madam Chair and fellow board members. My name's Robert France. I'm with Senate Construction Corp., and we are representing the Willett family and Filters Health and Service at 15 Adams Street. We're hopeful that after your review, we'll be able to get approval for the proposed addition of 12,277 square feet. We've been before the Board of Health for both stormwater management and also some discussion about existing previous hazmat conditions that had been cleared and approved by the Board of Health. In addition to that, we met with the Conservation Commission. That hearing has been continued until the next meeting. However, they have forwarded their proposed conditions or proposed recommendations to the planning board for review. So with that in mind, we're here to answer any questions, and I'll introduce the team. We've got Dan Hazen.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop you just for 1 second. I just want to read it to the record. This is item H, continued public hearing, application for approval of a site plan, 15 Adams Street, Senate Construction is the applicant. Please proceed.
Okay, so should I start over?
No.
All right.
No,
I'll
you can
introduce
just
our team.
introduce your team and we're just gonna keep on trucking.
Okay, good.
What you said.
Dan Hazen from HSH is the civil engineer of record. I have Tom Willett from the Willett family representing 15 Adams Street LLC, and Steve Sekakini from SAK Engineering. And that's who's here in attendance, along with another associate, Duncan Clark from Senate Construction.
Great. Where this is a continued public hearing, I'm gonna reach out to staff. Staff, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
So just as was kind of previously mentioned, so what they did apply for this a long time ago, back in I think September, and they took a while to go through the process. Working with, it's a difficult site. It's an older site. So they went to the Board of Health at the end of the year 2021. We had got comments from Board of Health, and they recently went to Conservation. Conservation heard them. Conservation has a policy of not closing in one night. However, we have comments from them, and they are not making any substantial changes to the site plan that is existing or that they are proposing with us. Therefore, we felt that it would be safe to bring it before you for a vote. They are proposing, again, a 12,000 square foot addition. They have a lot of Connex containers on site, and this is to stop that from happening. So that
I love that. I love that.
So that's
great.
Staff has to stand that.
Great, thank you.
Can I make one more comment, just to add?
No.
I'm going to anyway.
Of course.
So anyway, just quickly, just in terms of conditions that, obviously, we've talked about the Connex containers. The reason why they're there is because they need an addition. They're going to build the addition. So we just wanted to clearly clarify that the Connex containers will need to leave once the addition, before we have the CO for the addition. The other just small item, and I'm not sure if we talked about this before, but I'm pretty sure over the course of time we did, is first, just in terms of the curbing type behind drainage structures, did we talk about making sure it was vertical behind the drainage structures?
I feel like we definitely did internally.
Okay.
It might have been at the previous planning board meeting that they approved
Okay,
that.
and then, so there's just that update to the plan. And then, as I think we mentioned at the opening of the public hearing, this site, if you look at the greater sites here, and you look at the housing authority property that comes up from Adams Street, there's just a very difficult access. What we would like to propose, and it's really proposing that this applicant work with us to try to figure out if there's an opportunity to make some emergent connections, either pedestrian or bicycle, especially as we look at connecting the Minuteman bike path. And we also are having a conversation with this applicant about the rezoning into the innovation zone, which was continued until the next meeting. But as these two pieces are working together, we would very much want to work with this applicant, look at the site and see if there's any opportunities that we can work to gain potentially an easement in parts of the site that may be, part of the site that's not primary use for this use. So we can really continue to explore these different pathways of access in and around the area and up Summit Drive, and just really do really important connections. And
the site is just central to try to looking at those connections. So that's a condition of approval, and I would like for the applicant to weigh in on that, just for the record to, because the condition is, we'd like to propose and that, you're willing to continue that conversation with us. It's not mandating that you do anything at this point with this addition, other than just continue to work with us to try to identify those locations and along the site.
Agreed. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'd love to be part of those conversations as well. I think it's crucial to the progress of Burlington to actually have that access to that parcel of land where it could be so pertinent to continued development. So do you have any opposition to that?
No, this is Tom Willett. No, we're fine with that. And in fact, that's why we applied for the innovation is to go forward and open up the land.
That's great. Fantastic. Leaving it to the board, do you have any questions, comments, concerns? I feel like this is pretty straightforward, and I'm really excited the fact that the applicant is going to work with us to discuss that landlocked parcel.
I do.
Anyone?
No question.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question.
Sure.
On the plan, I see 3 connex containers being removed in the back. I think the last time you were here, you said you had quite a few more, and there's one over to the right that doesn't look like it's going to be removed, which is right next to the metal shed there.
Shouldn't they all be removed?
Yeah,
We will condition, we will be conditioned.
They will all be removed.
All right, so we have all existing,
Okay.
all will be removed.
It's not on the plan, though,
That will be a condition.
It'll be a condition and they'll update the plan for us.
unless,
Yeah, they actually have been removed for the most part. There's one more small one, a very small one near the that outbuilding to the right. That's the only one that's left. They'll all be gone. Yep.
and the last time I asked if we could get the name of the people that you got the connexes from, you have to say if we need a permit. Did you give that to staff?
Yeah, I don't know whether we did or not. I will look that up. Can't think of the name of it right now, but as I say, they were there for a little while, longer than we would have liked ourselves, but they are gone. But I'll get that for you. And presently, to make up for that room, we're renting in Woburn, which we prefer moving back everything to this one site. But
Yeah, the idea of their staff is to contact the people to say, hey, just to let you know, if you go into Burlington, like Airbnb, which we'll hopefully talk about time later on, but, then they can just make sure that someone, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone online, and clearly not in the audience, that would like to discuss this matter?
I am seeing no one, Madam Chair.
I'm seeing no one either. Moving forward, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request for approval of a site plan application of Senate Construction for property located at 15 Adams Street to permit the construction of a 12,277 plus or minus square foot single-story addition to the existing building and the associated site improvements as reflected on a plan entitled Site Plan for Industrial Building Addition 15 Adams Street, Burlington, Mass. Prepared by Howard Stein Hudson, dated August 3rd, 2021, revised to February 10th, 2022, consisting of 8 sheets, subject to the following provisions, terms, and conditions.
All those in favor?
Second.
As amended, sorry.
As amended, sorry.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Thank you so much, folks. I look forward to having future conversations with you about that parcel.
very good. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Good night.
Moving on, I think we just have,
Last each minute.
we just have minutes? Has everyone had a chance to review them?
I actually have not.
Okay, so let's table that for next, has everybody else?
I have with comments.
So do we want to table that for next week, or for next meeting?
There's enough of you.
I think there's enough we can.
You can vote without me, Brenda.
Probably need to table it.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, we'll table it for next meeting. MBTA communities, comments, discussion, anything?
I don't want to spend a long time. We did do a presentation on the Monday's selectmen's meeting. That's on BCAT that you can stream.
Okay.
Watching it, the overall message is, I think Burlington's way better off than a lot of communities, and I do think we can figure this out in a two-pronged approach of finding areas that already have multifamily that meet the density and potentially adjusting the zoning, as well as looking at some new opportunities. But I think we are fortunate at having 33% multifamily in town, that we have possibilities with existing housing stock and.
How far does the ways have to be from a T-stop?
Half a mile.
Half a mile, okay.
And one of the clarifying questions we have is Beacon Village came up a few times, and there are T-stops in Woburn right over the line right
Yeah.
there. And, you know, the intent of the legislation is that you're half a mile from a T-stop,
Right.
not necessarily a T-stop that must be a Burlington. So, I think that, anyway, so
And then
looking
the
at
Grove
those.
Street, that apartment building is right there too. There's a courthouse stop department.
The Kimball Court,
Kimball, yeah.
yeah, Kimball Court, we'd have to draw a little bit of different lines, because there's just so much wetland for the factor in the acreage.
Yeah, but it would be,
But,
be close to a
yeah.
T-stop right there.
Yes, that's the point. So we're taking a look at those. We have to submit a report by May 2nd as kind of our existing housing stock and what it looks like. And then by the end of the year, actually, no, by March of next year, we have to come up with a plan.
I was
Okay.
So, okay.
Madam Chair, could I just ask, think about multifamily. To me, it would be good to put multifamily, for instance, down by the mall, because they're gonna be, you know, consumers down there and so forth. And it's an excellent location, it's right on Route 93. So I wondered if there are any parcels down there that somebody might want to rezone.
Macy's already thinking about it. Macy's.
Yeah.
Macy's
That's
parking
good.
lot.
That's already in the.
Macy's
works, I think.
parking lot?
Yep, the
Yeah.
Macy's guy already said he was.
Well, I'm usually about that far behind.
Well, no, I happened to talk to a guy at one of these Middlesex,
No, but I was thinking that might be an opportunity down in that area, which would be so suitable.
right in the parking lot. Right there,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the containers are.
Well, let's, I haven't had an opportunity to.
Well, there's a
to
huge
watch the
parking lot
MBTA.
down there, and I can tell you, there's never anybody there.
Well, there is, it's fluid that they rent trucks.
Yeah, and that back parking lot by 128,
Yep.
I never see anybody down there, down there all the time.
Make a motion to go past 11.
People park at the
No, we're
side
gonna,
and go down.
master plan,
They-
you're
they
gonna give
don't go
that
on
to
that
us
big
next
parking
week.
fee.
There's nothing else that is there any other committee, anything pertinent that we need to discuss right now? Because
Really
we're.
quick,
No.
Village Park Committee is very proud of Burlington because they raised the money to buy
saw
the
that.
cherries in less than 3 days.
That was awesome, and
Congrats.
congratulations, and thank you for
It
your
was
efforts
wonderful,
on that.
and the new call for artists will be complete April 15th.
Okay,
That's
may I have a motion, please?
Motion made to adjourn. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Second.
One thing real quick, I have an MAPC update, which I never have, which I want to share. I'm our liaison to the MAPC. Usually it's macro level stuff, and there's really nothing it's just kind of like general stuff and a lot of award given. Last MAPC meeting, we had a presentation called Metro Common 2050, which is the Greater Boston Long Range Regional Plan. It was done by a person named Eric Hove, and Melissa Tentaklis is also our MAPC alternate rep. We want to have Eric come speak to boards in town to give a presentation for Burlington. So I just want to let you know that's coming down the pike, and we definitely want planning involved in that and all that. So just wanted to share that with everyone.
Great. Motion made to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second. I can't second.
You seconded.
I second because I was just here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Happy St. Patrick's Day,
Happy
folks.
St. Patrick's
We
Day.
need you to sign.
Nope.
Thank you, staff.
Sign the special permit, and then you may leave.
Sore wrist.